I can't forget that call. It's burned into my memory like the static in my head before the line went dead. I've been a 911 operator for over a decade. I've heard everything. Car accidents, domestic fights, lost hikers. But this one was different. It started normal enough routine until it didn't. It was just past midnight, the kind of late hour where the office hums with quiet tension and the phones feel heavier than usual. The clock ticked in sync with my heartbeat. I remember sipping my lukewarm coffee and scrolling through reports, trying to keep my mind occupied. Then the line rang. "Wevan, what's your emergency?" I said, my voice practiced, calm, neutral. There was a pause. Static crackled faintly over the line, like the connection was underwater. Then a man's voice, tense, rushed. I picked up a girl. On the highway. Rural highway. Near Elmwood. She's crying. I don't know what to do." I leaned forward, my pen poised. "Okay, sir. Can you tell me your location?" I don't know the exact mile marker. I'm just on Route 23. It's empty here. Nothing but trees. And she's screaming sometimes. I think she's scared. "Please, I need help." I wrote furiously, heart starting to pick up. "Sir, stay calm. Are you safe? Is she harming you?" No, I don't know. She's crying, begging me. "Please." The voice wavered, panicked. Then, as if someone had hit a switch, the line filled with soft static, high-pitched and whispering. I squinted at the monitor, tapped my headset, tried to clear the line. "Sir, can you hear me?" I asked. A muffled scream cut through the static, jagged and raw. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just fear, there was something more. Something unnatural in it. Please. The man's voice cracked. Oh God!" Then nothing but static. I called back immediately, but it went straight to a deadline. No signal. Route 23 didn't have coverage that far out, not enough for a call to drop like that. My gut twisted. Something about that scream. It wasn't just terror. It was wrong. Hollow. Almost like it wasn't coming entirely from a human throat. I reported it, filled the notes, but no units ever confirmed anything. Nothing was found along that stretch of highway. The man never called again. And for weeks afterward, I couldn't shake it. Every time the phone rang in that office, every time I heard the faint static in my headset, I thought I'd hear that same scream again. It started to seep into my dreams. I'd be driving along empty roads at night, the world outside black and silent, and I'd see her, blurred, shaking, crying. But when I tried to help, I couldn't reach her. My hands passed through her like mist. And the man, his voice would call out, urgent, pleading, terrified. But the static always drowned him. I remember one morning, arriving at work, the air heavy and cold, even though the sun was up. My coworker Sarah asked if I was okay. I lied. I said I slept poorly, nothing more. I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell anyone. People hear the word psychological and think it's vague or dismiss it as stress. But there's something in that line, in that scream, that left a mark, like an imprint on the inside of my skull. I kept thinking about the man, the way he spoke, how careful, how trembling he was. He didn't sound like someone making a prank call. No, there's a subtle rhythm in real fear. I know it. Years of listening teach you that. And what he described, a crying girl on a deserted highway begging him. I've never forgotten the pleading in her voice through his words. I've never forgotten the way he said, please. Sometimes I wonder if the scream was her, or if it was something else. There's a way a voice can shift when you listen too long. The static, it wasn't just interference. It was layered, like whispers hiding behind itself. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear it again. Low and far away at first, then closer, louder. And then it cuts off suddenly, like someone snatched it away. I've tried to research that stretch of Route 23. Mostly just trees, a few abandoned farms, nothing remarkable. But every map shows some strange patterns if you look closely. Roads that don't connect, mile markers that seem to repeat or disappear. Local folklore mentions disappearances, but nothing official. People laugh it off. Old ghost stories, they say. But it's different when you hear it live. When someone is calling, screaming, begging, and the line goes dead. I began to notice small things at work, subtle at first. Headsets would flicker with static even when no calls were coming in. Voices, sometimes unintelligible, seemed to whisper just beyond my hearing. And I started keeping a record. Every strange call, every dropped line. Patterns started to emerge. Always rural highways, always women, always screaming. But the man, the driver, was unique. I could feel his terror like a heat wave through the receiver. That panic sticks with me. I didn't sleep much after that night. Every shadow in the office seemed to shift when I glanced away. Even the fluorescent lights flickered in a rhythm that sounded almost like breathing. I started sleeping with the headset on, as though it would warn me if something tried to call through again. Sometimes in the early hours, I thought I heard the static rise on its own. Soft, just at the edge of hearing, like a warning. Then one night, about a month later, I got a call. It wasn't from Route 23, not exactly. But the voice, the man, it was him. Older now, his tone ragged, voice hoarse. "It's happening again," he whispered. "She's here. She's back, please." There. Static swallowed the rest. I stayed on the line, my heart hammering, trying to hear him. Then faintly, I thought I could hear the crying. It was faint, distant, almost buried behind layers of interference. But it was there. And then a noise I'll never unhear. A sound not human, not quite animal, resonating like a hollow bone. And the line went dead again. I reported it. Again. Nothing was found. Nothing officially. And yet I knew. I knew something had followed him. And maybe, somehow, it had learned to reach through the lines, to find a voice in the quiet static. Weeks turned into months. I still answer calls. I still sit at the same desk. But sometimes, just as I'm about to hang up from a routine call, a false alarm, a drunk driver, a lost pet, I catch a flicker in the static. A whisper beneath the usual noise. Not words, not entirely, but almost. And my hands start to shake, and I swear I hear someone crying. Somewhere behind the miles of wires and fiber and dead air, I hear her. I've learned to accept it, or at least to live with it. I carry the memory like a weight in my chest. Every day, every night, the quiet static hums along the edge of my hearing. And when I drive home after my shift on dark, empty roads, I sometimes see her. A flash of a girl in the rearview mirror, shaking, crying, begging. But when I look, the road is empty. Only the trees and the creeping shadows stretching long in the headlights. I've never told anyone what I really think happened. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even my family. They would call me paranoid, crazy, but I know what I heard. I know what I felt. I know the way the static reached through the line and burned itself into my mind. Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there, wandering those highways, invisible, unheard, but screaming. Or maybe she's somewhere else now, and the static is just a residue, a ghost signal bouncing through the lines until it finds someone else. I know one thing. If you ever hear a call, the voice breaking with fear, and then the static rising, don't think it's just interference. Listen carefully. Listen too long, and it will reach you. It will find its way inside your head, and the memory of that scream, that pleading, will never leave. And sometimes, in the quietest moments when I'm alone in my apartment, I think I hear it again. Not through the phone, not from anywhere outside, but from inside. A soft, desperate cry, stretching thin across the empty space, begging, just begging for someone to save her. And I can't. I never could. I never wanted to go back there. Not Route 23, not the stretch of road where that first call ended in static and terror. But sometimes the world pulls you back in, whether you're ready or not. A few days after that first night, I got the follow-up from dispatch. Police had finally located the driver, or what was left of him. The call came while I was trying to focus on paperwork, my pen hovering over a report I couldn't finish. The car, "It's off the road," the officer's voice said over the radio. "Ditch near mile marker 42. No one alive inside. Passenger seat. It's wet. Water everywhere, but there's no one there." I froze, hand tightening around my pen. Wet? No one there? My mind refused to go where it wanted me to go, but the image pressed forward anyway. A girl crying, terrified, and gone. The details trickled in slowly, each one more absurd than the last. The man's car had gone off the road sometime in the night. The ditch was shallow but filled with water from a recent storm. The engine was still warm, like he'd only just stepped out. No signs of struggle, no footprints other than his. But the passenger seat, soaked and empty, empty. I couldn't stop staring at that word. I repeated it to myself in the quiet of the office. Empty, empty, empty. I remember the first photo they sent me. Just one grainy shot of the car, headlights dim, water glistening along the edge of the ditch. The back seat, visible through the window, looked wet. Shiny in a way water shouldn't look, like it had been crying itself. I couldn't explain why, but the angle of the shot made it feel alive, waiting, watching. I tried to shake it off. A crash, a drowned passenger. Maybe the girl panicked. Maybe she had run. But something about it. Something inside me told me no one could survive that night and leave nothing behind. Not like that. The officer's voice came again. We searched the area thoroughly. No one hiding. No missing persons reported nearby. Nothing. Just the car and the wet seat. And then the silence. That silence always lingers longest. It presses against your ears, pushes against the walls of your skull. It waits for the next sound, the next clue, the next whisper. But there was nothing. Just static in my head. The echo of the scream from before. I started remembering things. Small details I hadn't noticed until now. The way the man had said, "She's scared." The way he stuttered when he tried to describe her crying. The way the static had hidden something behind it. I could almost feel her presence in the memory. Almost hear her whispering through the wires, soaked and trembling, eyes wide with panic. Weeks passed. The call log remained open in my mind even when the official file was closed. Route 23 became more than a road. It became a presence, like an old house you can't stop noticing, even when you're blocks away. I started driving home at night more slowly, watching the edges of the road for movement. Shadows in the trees, reflections in the puddles left by recent storms. Every dark patch of water on the roadside seemed deeper than it should be. Every ditch seemed to stretch a little longer. One night, I dreamt about it. I was standing by the car, the man's car. It was empty now, abandoned, but the passenger seat glistened like the first photo I saw. The water on it rippled even though there was no wind. I could see her reflection in it, distorted, shaking, mouth open, crying. I reached out, but my hands sank into the water. I felt her trying to pull me in, dragging me toward her, toward the wet seat that should have been empty. I woke up gasping, soaked in my own sweat, heart hammering. I began to notice small things at work after that. Static in the headset even when no calls were active. A faint whisper behind my ear when I leaned over paperwork. Sometimes a faint wet smell like rain or mud clinging to the office air. My coworkers never noticed. Or maybe they did and chose not to say anything. People avoid what they can't explain. I tried to talk myself down. It's a ditch, a crash, a missing girl. People disappear all the time. The world has worse things than Route 23, but my gut wouldn't let it go. That wet seat. It felt deliberate. Like someone or something was making sure I knew she had been there. And wasn't there anymore? I started driving Route 23. Not at night at first. I wanted to see the road in daylight, rationally. The trees were thick, branches clawing across the sky. The ditch was shallow, just as the report said, but the water lingered longer than it should. A leftover puddle from a storm that had passed a week ago. I walked along the roadside, imagining the man's panic. The girl crying in the passenger seat. Her hands pressed against the glass, trembling. And then, nothing. Just the wind through the trees, whispering like dry paper. One day, I drove by again during a heavy rainstorm. The ditch filled quickly, the road slick. I slowed to a crawl, headlights cutting through the sheets of water. And I swear I saw something. A figure huddled in the seat, shaking. A flash, just for a second, but unmistakable. Then it was gone. No reflection. No water ripples. Nothing. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to. Rational thought fled. It was as if the car itself was holding its secret. The wet seat a kind of invitation I wasn't ready to accept. Something in me wanted to leave, wanted to never think about that road again. But some part of me, maybe fear, maybe curiosity, kept pulling me back. I started hearing stories. Drivers who swore they saw a figure in the passenger seat at night, vanishing before the next curve. Lights flickering in empty cars, radios crackling to life with voices that weren't there. I told myself it was coincidence, hallucination, fatigue. But the more I learned, the more it fit a pattern I couldn't deny. Something followed that road. Something claimed those who crossed it. Something that could vanish but leave a mark. A wet seat. Empty but present. And then there was the smell. The wet, muddy smell that seemed to cling to the edge of my thoughts. I could almost taste it when I closed my eyes. It wasn't decay. Not exactly. But it had the same weight, the same unnatural heaviness. It pressed against me, reminding me of that night, the first call, the scream lost in static. I tried to tell myself it was over. The man was gone. The girl, whoever she was gone. The car had been removed, towed, whatever. And yet I can't escape it. My mind keeps returning to that seat, that water, that empty space where she should have been. Sometimes I dream I'm sitting in the passenger seat, wet and trembling, looking at the driver's hands on the wheel. I can't speak. I can't move. I can only watch as the road stretches endlessly before me, empty, black, silent. I think the worst part is the absence, not knowing what happened, not knowing why the seat was wet, why she disappeared, why the man never spoke again. It's the silence that lingers. The empty space where a person should be, filled with the memory of something too wrong to describe. I've learned to live with it. I keep answering calls, keep listening, keep writing down what I hear. But there's always a part of me waiting for the next call, the next static, the next empty back seat, waiting to see if I will hear her crying again or if the road will claim me too. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I swear I feel it. The damp chill of water soaking my clothes, the brush of a trembling hand against mine, the quiet sobbing that echoes in the dark. She is out there, somewhere, and the wet seat waits, always waiting. I've never trusted silence the way I do now. Not after that night. Not after Route 23 and the wet seat and the calls that cut out before I could breathe. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, that fills your chest until you feel like you're suffocating. It's different from ordinary quiet. It waits, it listens, it remembers. I was on the graveyard shift, answering reports, logging calls when the radio crackled. Just the usual static at first. I'd grown used to the static. It's a background hum in this line of work, like the low pulse of an old building. But this time it wasn't static. Not entirely. Deputy, My head snapped up. My name. Drawn out, soft, trembling. A whisper, but unmistakably my name. I froze, hand on the mic. Who is this? Dispatch? Silence. Just static, sharp and biting. I tried again. Nothing. Dead. The radio line was dead. I felt my pulse spike. That familiar mix of fear and disbelief. It wasn't possible. The radio wasn't connected to anyone, and even if it was, my name isn't something you just hear floating through the static. Not like that. Not soft, like someone breathing on your neck in the dark. I replayed it in my head over and over. Dan! The way it trembled. The tiny crackle at the edges, like the voice was leaking through a barrier it shouldn't have been able to cross. The way it made my stomach twist into knots I didn't know I still had. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside the station, my boots crunching on gravel. The night was unusually still, colder than it should have been for October. My breath puffed out in clouds, short and shallow, like I'd been running even though I hadn't moved. The beam of the flashlight cut through the black like a knife, reflecting off the frost forming on the edges of my patrol car. I scanned the horizon. Nothing. Trees lined the edge of the station property, skeletal in the moonlight. The road leading out was empty. No headlights. No movement. Just the wind whispering through the branches. I went back inside trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was a bad line, a delayed broadcast from another district. But deep down I knew that voice, soft and trembling, was hers. The girl from Route 23, the one who had vanished. The one whose presence had soaked the passenger seat with water, but left nothing else behind. I remembered the first time I heard about her. The call that never ended. The man screaming, her voice lost in the static. It was always there, buried in the memory, but I had convinced myself that maybe it was just fear playing tricks on our minds. That it was over. That she was gone. But the radio had proven me wrong. I sat at my desk, radio in hand, shaking slightly. The warmth of the station's lights did nothing to ease the chill crawling up my spine. I could still hear it if I focused. Her whisper, almost like it was brushing my ear, barely there but unmistakable. Dan. I traced the wires on the desk, checking connections. Everything was normal. Dead. The line was closed, disconnected. No one should have been able to speak through it. And yet, I'd heard her. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. The wet seat. The crash. The way the man's voice had broken as he described her crying. The way the static had swallowed the last syllables of his sentences, leaving only terror behind. It all came back in a wave, heavy, suffocating. The image of her trembling hands, the pleading in her eyes, the way her presence had filled the car even after she was gone. I stood up and walked to the window, staring into the dark. The forest across the road looked solid, yet somehow wrong. Shadows bent in ways they shouldn't, as if the trees themselves were leaning closer, listening. My reflection in the glass made me flinch. I looked tired, worn, but the reflection wasn't quite right. Her whisper had left a trace on my senses. I could still feel it crawling along my skin, soft, wet, and cold. I checked the logs again. No calls, no dispatch activity. Nothing unusual. I should have felt relief. Instead, my stomach churned, a thick, heavy knot. I remembered how she had sounded through the static that night. Human, terrified, but something beyond that too. Something that didn't belong. The radio crackled again, soft this time, almost imperceptible. Dan! I dropped the mic, heart hammering. The air around me felt wet, like I had stepped into a mist. I could almost smell it. Rain, mud, something deeper, more ancient. Something that had waited in the shadows, patient, silent, and now curious. I grabbed my flashlight again. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold it steady. I walked through the station, past the rows of lockers, past the dusty evidence files, and out into the yard. Every step felt heavy, as if the night itself was pushing back, trying to keep me inside. I walked slowly down the gravel road leading from the station. The radio hung from my belt, silent except for the static that seemed to cling to it. And then I heard it. Her whisper again, closer this time, almost right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the wind bending the trees, the frost cracking under my boots, and the dark stretching endlessly in every direction. I tried talking out loud. "Who's there? Show yourself!" My voice sounded small, tinny, swallowed by the night. And yet I could still hear her whisper, clearer now, urgent, pleading, desperate. "Dan! Come, come." I froze, and that's when I noticed it. The fog, thin, crawling, clinging to the ground like living smoke. I hadn't seen it before. It wasn't in the forecast. It wrapped around my ankles, damp and cold, and I realized with a sinking stomach that it wasn't just fog. It was wet, like the passenger seat, like her. I turned back toward the station, trying to shake it off, trying to convince myself it was just my mind. But the whisper followed me, soft and close, brushing my ear like breath against my skin. "Dan!" I ran. My boots splashed through the thin layer of fog that had formed on the road. My radio bounced against my chest, still dead, still silent, yet alive with her presence. The night pressed in, thick and heavy, every tree a watching shadow. The wind stilled, the world gone quiet except for the sound of my own breathing and the soft, wet whisper calling my name. I made it back to the station and slammed the door shut. My hands were soaked, trembling, shaking uncontrollably. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, stress, a trick of the wind, of the fog, of my mind. But I couldn't deny it. The voice was real. The wet chill was real. The way it had breathed against my neck, cold and clammy, was real. I spent the rest of the night in the office, flashlight on, radio in hand. Every now and then, I thought I heard the whisper again, faint, far away, teasing me, reminding me that she was still out there. Still watching, still calling, and I realized something I hadn't before. She doesn't just whisper through radios. She waits for someone to hear. She waits for someone to answer. And once you do, once you acknowledge her, she follows. Always. I stayed in the office until sunrise, watching the shadows stretch and recede, every tree, every patch of fog, every glint of frost feeling like eyes on me. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I only listened. Sometimes, even now, I swear I hear her. Not on the radio, not through the airwaves, not even in the shadows outside. I hear her in my own mind, a cold, wet breath at the back of my neck, whispering my name softly, endlessly. Dan. I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she is, but I know she's still there, somewhere, waiting in the dark. And I know that if I ever stop listening, if I ever turn my back, she won't just disappear. She will find a way through, and I will hear her again. The call came in just as I was settling into the quiet hum of the night shift. The kind of night where even the phones feel heavy, like they're holding on to the dark with you. I was sipping lukewarm coffee, scanning my monitor, when the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? I said, voice calm, practiced. A small voice answered, trembling, soft, like it might break apart at any second. Hello, I'm lost. Okay, sweetie. That's all right. Can you tell me your name? I'm Tommy. His words were rushed, panicked, spilling out too fast. I was with my dad, and I don't see him anymore. And there's someone watching me. A tall man. He's following me. I swallowed hard, even though I've been trained to keep my voice steady. A child alone, scared in the woods, describing someone or something following him. Every instinct screamed that this was serious. Tommy, you're going to be okay, I said, forcing calm into my tone. Can you tell me where you are? I don't know. Trees everywhere, and it's dark, and he's there. Always there. His words trailed off, a whimper cutting them short. I grabbed my notebook and began writing, my hands shaking slightly. Tommy, I need you to stay where you are if you can. Can you do that? I don't know. He's tall. He's moving closer. I think he's... The line cracked, static rushing in like a wave. Then his voice, small, almost swallowed by the interference. He's behind me. He knows I'm scared. He smells it. He's smiling, his eyes. Oh God, his eyes. Then the line went dead. I slammed my fist against the desk. My chest was tight, heart hammering. I tried calling back, but it went straight to a dead line. No signal. The woods in this county are notorious for that. 1 minute you have a call, the next it's like it never existed. I immediately dispatched units, telling them what I knew. Child lost in the woods, I said, keeping my voice clipped, professional. But inside I was screaming. I knew the danger. I've taken these calls before. Kids get lost. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they wander. Sometimes they vanish. I kept the line open, scanning the monitors, tracking units as they moved into the dark woods. And I couldn't stop thinking about him. Tommy, little, terrified, imagining the tall man, or maybe not imagining. The way he described the eyes, that part didn't sound like a child's imagination. That sounded real, and it should have stayed a nightmare. Minutes crawled. My fingers drummed nervously on the desk. The forest is dense there, old trees twisting like skeletons in the night. Every rustle, every branch breaking could mean nothing, or everything. My mind replayed his voice over and over. He's behind me. He knows I'm scared. He smells it. He's smiling. His eyes? I couldn't get past that. The smell. Eyes. Smiling. A predator, patient and calm while he hunted something small, helpless. I had a child's voice in my ear, describing it as if it were real, tangible, and every second that passed made me feel like I was letting him down. Then the officer on the radio called in. I think I see something. Near the creek, by the fallen oak. Possibly a small boy. Relief and dread hit me at the same time. Relief because someone might reach him. Dread because that meant we weren't just fighting distance, we were fighting time. And the woods. They hide more than shadows. I kept the line open, whispering, urging him. Tommy, it's okay. You're safe now. Keep walking slowly toward the sound of my voice. Can you do that? I think... I see... Oh God, he's there. He's smiling. He's tall. I can see his face. My stomach turned over. I grabbed the headset tighter, clinging to the sound of his voice, afraid to lose him. Tommy, look for the officer. He's near the creek. Don't run. Keep moving slowly. The line crackled again, but not with static this time. It was the sound of him, whispering, almost under his breath, almost terrified, almost fascinated. He's watching. He's waiting. He knows I'm scared. He's smiling. Don't leave me. Then silence. I called back immediately. Nothing. Dead. The forest ate the sound as if it never existed. My hands shook, breath coming too fast. My chest hurt, tight like it was being squeezed. Every horror story I had ever answered, every nightmare I'd filed away in my memory, none of it compared to this. I kept the line open for hours, even after the units reported searching the area. They found tracks, small footprints, interrupted by large, elongated prints, odd, malformed. Nothing official could confirm it. No one could explain it. The woods were empty. Yet something had been there. Something had passed through. I can't stop thinking about that boy. His voice, soft, shaking, describing the tall man. Every word he spoke carved a line in my brain. I hear it when I close my eyes. Even now, months later, I can hear him, whispering in my head, pleading, terrified. I remember the cold, the way he said it, trembling as if the night itself had bitten into him. It's dark. He's tall. Don't let him touch me. I tried to imagine him found, safe, wrapped in a blanket, shaking but alive. But the reality doesn't fit neatly into comforting images. The forest swallows things whole, and some nights I can't convince myself that he was ever truly out of danger. I think about the units walking through the woods that night. They saw nothing. They heard nothing. The tracks led to nowhere. It's as if the tall man had never been there. But I remember him in Tommy's voice. I remember the fear. I remember the way he tried to describe him, and how every adjective was too small, too weak, too human to capture the horror of what he saw. I stayed at my desk long after the night shift ended, clutching the headset, scanning every monitor, replaying the call in my head. Sometimes I imagine the tall man just standing in the shadows, patient, waiting, letting the forest swallow him as it did the boy's footsteps, letting the memory sink into the soil. Watching, always watching, smiling. Even now, when I'm at home, I can hear that whisper at the edge of my consciousness, soft, trembling. Don't let him touch me. I've tried to tell myself it's over, that the child is safe, that the forest is quiet, that the tall man is just a story the boy made up in fear. But I know better. I've heard that fear. I've felt that fear. It doesn't belong to imagination. It belongs to something real, and it leaves a residue. Sometimes I imagine that night stretching infinitely, that the boy is still out there walking through the trees, and the tall man is following, silent, patient, always just out of reach. And I'm here, thousands of miles away, listening to the crackle of a deadline, trying to keep him safe with words that will never reach him. I can't forget the smell, the cold, the way his small voice trembled. And I can't forget that smile, that unnatural, patient, slow smile, waiting, always waiting, even now. When the night is quiet, when the phones are silent, I hear it again, faintly, soft, trembling. Don't let him touch me. And I know somehow he's still out there, and somehow he's still watching. Night had a weight to it I'd never felt before. After the call from Tommy, the boy lost in the woods, the air itself seemed heavier, like it carried the echoes of things I couldn't see. I stayed at my desk, monitoring the search teams, watching dots of light moving through the black expanse of the forest. Radios crackled with static and half-formed words, but none of it felt real. Not really. The officers were experienced, seasoned in night searches, but even they sounded tense over the radio. We're moving along the ridge. No sign of him yet. Their voices were clipped, professional, but I could hear the edge, the unspoken fear. Then it started. Footsteps. At first, just one pair, distant, soft, almost in sync with the radio static. I heard them through the headset first, a crunching on dry leaves, careful, deliberate. I froze, leaning closer to the mic. Did you hear that? I asked, though no one could answer. They were already moving, scanning, calling out, "Tommy, you there?" One of the deputies shouted into the dark. His flashlight cut thin arcs across the trunks and underbrush. I could almost feel the beam slicing through the night, searching for the boy, for the impossible. And then the footsteps multiplied. They weren't just one set of small, hesitant steps. There were dozens, hundreds, overlapping, echoing, circling the searchers. I tried to make sense of it. A group of rescuers, but the officers were accounted for, their positions known. No one else should have been there. Did you hear that? I repeated, more to myself than anyone else. The radio lines crackled again. It's there. Footsteps everywhere. One deputy's voice wavered, fear bleeding through the professional tone. And then static swallowed the words. I could almost picture it. Tiny feet, large feet, some limping, some marching, circling, following, retreating, always overlapping, never pausing. The rhythm was off, unnatural. They didn't sound like a child walking, or even a group of people. They sounded like the forest itself had grown legs, like the shadows had taken shape and were moving alongside the officers, mocking them, filling the space. I could feel the panic creeping in. My stomach knotted, my hands shaking. I tried to keep calm, to focus, but the sound in my headset, just the faint echo of steps, made my chest tighten. Something was out there, moving with purpose, and it wasn't the boy. It wasn't human. I knew it the same way I knew static on a deadline was more than noise. "Keep calling his name," I said, my voice barely audible over the headset. "Tommy, it's okay. We're here. Come to the light." I heard the officers shouting into the darkness, flashlights swinging, beams cutting through the fog that had rolled in. The footsteps didn't stop. They multiplied, converging, retreating, dancing on the edges of the forest. One officer called out frustrated, "He's not here! Nothing's here!" And I wanted to scream back through the headset. I wanted to tell them I could hear it too. I could hear the forest breathing, the feet on leaves, the rustling behind every tree, the quiet, soft shuffle of things circling the boy. But I didn't. I kept my voice calm, forced myself to repeat protocols. I remember staring at the monitor, watching the dots of light move, each one a person carrying a flashlight, searching, shouting. And then I realized something that made my stomach twist so hard I almost threw up. The footsteps, they weren't following the deputies. They were everywhere at once, converging and retreating from every direction. Every time the officers moved, the rhythm shifted. Faster, slower, overlapping, impossible. One of the officers called out again, voice trembling. Wait, something's moving." I gripped the desk, heart hammering. "It's okay. Everyone stay calm. Mark your positions. Keep calling his name. He's there somewhere. He has to be there." But even as I said it, I felt the hopelessness. The forest was a trap, and the footsteps weren't guiding anyone. They were mocking. I could almost hear Tommy's small, trembling voice whispering through the leaves. "He's tall. He's smiling. Don't let him touch me." I thought of that smile, patient and calm, watching a child. And suddenly it made sense. The footsteps weren't just in the forest. They were in my mind, in every officer's mind, filling the empty spaces with sound, stretching time, looping fear over and over. Hours passed like minutes. Or maybe minutes passed like hours. I don't know. The forest has a way of swallowing perception, of bending time. The officers reported nothing. No child, no footprints other than their own, no sign of disturbance beyond the normal forest floor. But I could hear it. Footsteps too many, overlapping, patient, omnipresent. I could feel them at my back even when I closed my eyes. I could hear them outside the office window when the wind blew. Tiny, careful, deliberate, and then large, heavy, impossible. Always moving, always circling, always watching. I tried to leave the office. I tried to clear my head, but the footsteps followed. Not real, not audible to anyone else, but in my chest, in my ears, in my stomach. I could feel them, and I thought about the boy, Tommy, alone, terrified, in the center of it all. If the forest could do this to me from the station, imagine what it did to him. Imagine the weight of 100 feet, real and imagined, circling him, cutting off the path, hiding the way out. He was in the center of something far older than him, something that moved patiently, slowly, without need. I kept logging calls, trying to hold my hand steady. Every few minutes I'd check the radio, officers reporting nothing, just static, the forest empty. But I knew it wasn't. I could feel the rhythm of it, like the heartbeat of the night itself had grown legs and was circling, hunting, observing. The minutes stretched, then collapsed. At some point, they called off the active search for the night. No child found, no sign of him. The forest reclaimed itself. The footsteps vanished as suddenly as they began, leaving nothing but darkness and the memory of impossible movement. I stayed at my desk long after, staring at the monitors, listening to the static in my headset, trying to convince myself it was over. But it never is. The footsteps, they linger in your chest, in your skull, in your memory. They overlap and multiply in the quiet, reminding you that the forest never forgets, never stops moving, never releases what it claims. Even now, weeks later, I can hear them when I close my eyes. Not through radios, not through the forest, but in the silence of my apartment. Tiny steps and large steps, circling, converging, retreating. Always out of reach, always overlapping. Always reminding me that the boy might still be out there. And the tall man might still be waiting, patient, watching, smiling. I keep telling myself it was just my imagination. Fatigue, stress, a prank of the mind. But I know the truth. I know what I heard. Footsteps too many, moving with purpose, filling the night, filling my ears, filling my chest. And somewhere in the dark, the boy is still calling, still lost. And the footsteps follow, patient, relentless, endless, and I can't stop hearing them. The night stretched like a living thing, thick and heavy, pressing in from all sides. After the call from Tommy, the boy lost in the woods, nothing felt normal anymore. Even the radio static seemed alive, shifting, whispering faintly when I wasn't listening too closely. I sat at my desk, monitoring the search teams, watching the tiny dots of their flashlights sweep through the black forest like predators tracking prey. The officers' voices came over the headset, steady, professional. But I could hear the tension, the edges fraying. "We're checking along the ridge," one said. No sign yet. At first I didn't notice it. Just a faint crunch on the leaves, soft and distant, like someone walking lightly. I froze, ears straining, leaning closer to the mic.
"Do you hear that?"
I asked. But the officers were already calling out, scanning, shining lights through the dense darkness. Then it multiplied. Footsteps, many footsteps, overlapping, circling, shuffling, soft, careful, deliberate. And sometimes heavier, as if larger feet had joined in, but they weren't human. The rhythm was impossible, chaotic and precise at the same time. "Keep calling his name," I shouted into the headset. "Tommy, it's okay. Follow the lights. Come to us!" But the footsteps didn't lead anywhere. They weren't tracking the officers. They were surrounding, encircling, moving with intent, like the forest itself had grown legs. The deputies called out, frustrated. "Nothing. There's nothing here." I could feel my pulse in my ears. My stomach twisted. The footsteps weren't just behind or ahead. They were everywhere at once. Tiny steps, hesitant and fast. Larger, heavy ones. A rhythm I couldn't place, never could place. I realized with a sinking certainty that they weren't real. Not in the way we understand real. They were a presence. Watching, testing, waiting. One officer whispered into the radio, trembling. There's something moving. Too many footsteps." And then static swallowed the rest. I gripped the edge of the desk. My hands were shaking, cold and clammy. My head ached from trying to rationalize it. The forest was empty. The searchlights were just dots. No boy, no sign. No tracks other than the officer's own. But the footsteps continued, and I could feel them in my chest, in my ears, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I remembered Tommy's voice, small, terrified. "He's tall." "He's smiling. Don't let him touch me." The words came back, echoing, and suddenly I understood. The footsteps weren't just in the forest. They were in the air, in the dark, in the spaces where your mind tries to create order and fails. They multiplied, overlapping, filling every corner of perception, mocking us, teasing, circling endlessly. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning out there. The officers reported nothing, saw nothing, found nothing. But the sound didn't leave. It wrapped around me, cold and alive. I tried to breathe through it, tried to tell myself it was stress, imagination, fatigue. But the rhythm, the impossible overlay of steps, stayed. I could hear them in my mind as clearly as if someone were pacing the room behind me. Small, quick steps, heavy, deliberate steps, overlapping, always overlapping. The officers eventually called it off for the night. No child found. Nothing unusual. The forest swallowed itself again, leaving only darkness and the memory of impossible movement. I stayed at my desk long after, listening to the faint echo of footsteps in the headset, scanning every monitor, gripping the edge of the desk. I could feel them at my back, circling, patient, deliberate. Not real, not tangible, but present. I could almost hear whispers between the steps, low and teasing, too quiet to understand but impossible to ignore. I thought about Tommy, alone, terrified, in the center of it all. If I could feel the presence from miles away, imagine what he felt, trapped, encircled by footsteps that didn't belong to anything human, moving with patience and intent. A predator that didn't need to hurry, waiting, always waiting. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the steps returned. Tiny and careful, then heavy and impossible. Circling, retreating, converging, retreating again. In dreams, they stretched across the forest, folding over themselves, multiplying endlessly. I could feel the weight, the inevitability. I began to hear them even when I wasn't at work. The quiet of my apartment filled with faint crunching on the floor, shifting along the walls, circling, overlapping. My pulse would spike, my skin prickling. No one else heard it. But I did, always. The footsteps too many, a sound that wasn't a sound, reminding me that the boy might still be out there, and whatever followed him had not stopped, had not left, had not grown bored. I tried to leave the desk, to step outside and breathe in the night air. But the footsteps followed in my mind, not real, not tangible. But I could feel them brushing against my awareness, pressing against my chest. My own heartbeat became part of their rhythm. I became part of it. I tried talking to the officers again the next day. Some laughed nervously, others just shook their heads. Nothing, they said. Just the wind, old trees, your mind playing tricks. I wanted to scream that they weren't imagining it, that I had heard the footsteps with my ears, felt them with my chest, known them with my bones. But no one else could feel it. No one else had to live with it circling, patient, relentless. The forest was alive in ways I didn't understand. It had a memory. It had intent. And it didn't stop for the lost, not for the terrified, not for the child whose small voice still haunted me. The footsteps too many. They were its signature. A rhythm I would never forget. Even now, weeks later, I can hear it when the wind blows just right. Tiny steps on leaves, heavy steps in the shadows, overlapping endlessly, circling the edge of my perception. And sometimes, if I listen too closely, I can hear a whisper beneath the rhythm, soft, trembling, pleading, "Don't let him touch me." And I know, somehow, that the boy is still out there. And I know that whatever was circling that night is still patient, still watching, still moving. And I know that the footsteps too many, will never stop. I never expected the woods to feel deliberate, not just alive in the way forests are alive, the rustle of leaves, the groan of old branches, but aware, watching, waiting. After the calls, after the lost boy, the officers and I were dispatched again, this time to a clearing near the ridge where Tommy's footprints had ended. They said it was routine, a check, a sweep, but something in the air, the weight of the fog curling around the trees, told me it wasn't routine. I drove down the narrow dirt path, headlights cutting through the mist, wheels crunching over wet leaves. My stomach twisted, cold sweat clinging to my back, because I knew what I might find. Not the boy, he was gone, but something else. Something that lingered in the hollow spaces between the trees. The clearing appeared suddenly, a break in the darkness. Moonlight spilled over it, silver and thin, illuminating the ground. And that's when I saw them, small toys. Dolls, plastic cars, stuffed animals, all arranged in patterns too deliberate to be random. Circles, spirals, lines pointing toward the center. Tiny footprints circled around them, disturbed leaves pressed flat, like someone or something had knelt there carefully, slowly. My stomach dropped into my boots. The air felt heavier, colder. I stepped out of the patrol car, flashlight in hand, shining over the clearing. The toys glinted in the weak moonlight, and I could almost feel the weight of intent pressing down. Whoever or whatever had done this had not just been here. They had made a statement. A faint giggle drifted through the clearing. High-pitched, soft, almost too small to notice, I froze. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Hello?" I called, voice steady but thin, cracking under its own weight. "Is someone here?" Nothing answered except the giggling again, fainter this time, echoing through the trees like wind chimes caught in the wrong season. I swung my flashlight around, scanning the edges of the clearing, the shadows that stretched too long, the trees that bent unnaturally. Nothing. No child. No person. Just the toys, laid out as if waiting for me. I knelt slowly, keeping my eyes on the tree line. The patterns in the toys, they weren't random. They formed shapes, symbols I didn't recognize. Some resembled circles around points, some lines radiating outward. Each arrangement meticulous, deliberate. My hand hovered over one of the dolls. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. It felt wrong, as if contact would make the pattern come alive, like stepping onto a trap. The giggling grew louder, closer, yet still impossibly distant. It wrapped around me, curling up my spine, settling into my chest. I could feel it vibrating in the air, touching the hairs on my arms, tickling the back of my neck. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to keep a professional mindset. But the rational side of me was screaming. I thought of Tommy, the boy, lost, terrified, describing a tall man with a smile that didn't belong in the world. And I realized the toys, they were him. They were the echoes of children who had been here before. Or perhaps just one child, left behind again and again, playing alone while someone or something watched. Another giggle, closer this time, and I swear I saw movement. Something darted between two trees at the edge of my flashlight's beam. Small, quick, almost blurred. I swung the light toward it. Nothing. Only shadows that lingered longer than they should, leaves that refused to settle after the wind passed. I felt my chest tighten. The clearing wasn't just a place, it was a stage, and I was the audience. The toys, the careful patterns, the faint echoes of giggles. It was all meant to draw me in, to watch me feel fear, to watch me respond. I took a careful step back, trying to understand, to assess. The footprints in the dirt. They were small, child-sized. And yet, some prints were larger, elongated, distorted in ways I couldn't explain. They circled the toys in a way that made my stomach twist. Someone, or something, had moved here deliberately leaving a trace but never revealing itself. I crouched, tracing a line of prints with my flashlight. Small, careful, precise, leading toward the center of the clearing, then disappearing into thin air. And the toys, they seemed to pulse faintly in the moonlight, like shadows moving beneath their plastic forms. Another giggle, high, soft, and impossible. It came from all around, yet nowhere specific. I couldn't place it. My hands shook as I reached for my radio. "Dispatch, copy?" My voice wavered. No answer, static. I tried to calm myself. The toys were just toys. Someone was playing a sick prank. A child, maybe, or someone trying to unsettle us. But even as I thought it, a deep, ancient part of me knew better. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a child. This was something older, patient, aware. Something that could make the toys do this. Make them speak in silence, move in patterns, whisper in the night. The giggling came again, and this time I could swear I heard it between the trees, at my back, brushing against my ear. I spun, flashlight sweeping, but saw only darkness, only trees, only the wind moving leaves like fingers across the ground. I backed toward my car, trying not to look directly at the patterns in the clearing. Every step made the giggling shift, echo, curl around my chest. I could feel it pressing down like the night itself had weight. I remembered the stories I'd heard from other officers, from old logs in the station. Woods where children disappeared, places where people claimed to see things that weren't there, places with hollow clearings, with circles of stones, with symbols scratched into the bark. I had always dismissed them. Old wives' tales. But now, kneeling in the clearing, I understood. The stories were warnings, memories etched into the world, echoing through time. I forced myself to pick up a small stuffed bear, soft and wet with dew. Nothing. No movement, no whisper. Just a bear, laying where someone had placed it. But the feeling remained. The weight. The deliberate gaze I imagined from the shadows beyond the tree line. Another giggle, sharper now, like it had noticed me. I spun, flashlight swinging, trying to pierce the darkness, trying to see what was watching, waiting. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the sound vanished. Silence returned. Heavy, suffocating, unnatural silence. I stood, heart hammering, breath shaking. I knew I shouldn't stay. The clearing wasn't safe. The toys weren't just objects. They were markers, warnings, reminders. A hollow place meant to draw attention, to show us we were being watched. And the giggles, they weren't playful. They were the sound of patience, of something lingering just beyond perception, just beyond understanding. I moved toward my car, flashlight sweeping constantly. Every shadow seemed too long. Every leaf that moved in the wind seemed deliberate. I could feel eyes, too many eyes, watching from the darkness. I dared not turn my back. Once inside the patrol car, I locked the doors, keeping the flashlight trained on the clearing as long as I could see. The toys seemed unchanged, untouched, silent, and yet I could feel their presence, like the memory of a touch that never happened. Even weeks later, I can't shake it. Every time I close my eyes, I see the clearing. The toys arranged in impossible patterns, small footprints weaving between them, the faint echo of giggling that isn't really there, but is. I feel the weight of that hollow space pressing down, reminding me that it isn't empty. It never is. And whatever watches in the woods, it waits, waiting for someone to step inside, waiting for someone to see, waiting for someone to know. And when it finds them, it smiles, patient and slow, just like the tall man Tommy described. The hollow clearing exists in my memory now, a space that isn't fully there but can't be ignored. Toys laid out in patterns meant to unnerve, footprints that appear and vanish, giggling that brushes against your ear when the night is still. It's alive in a way that makes no sense, and I know deep down I was never meant to leave unmarked. I have nightmares sometimes, where I'm kneeling in that clearing again, toys circling me in impossible patterns, footprints growing around my boots, giggling soft, insistent, patient. And I remember what it feels like to be watched, not just by eyes, but by intention. And I know if I ever return, the hollow clearing will still be waiting, patient, silent, smiling. The night felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was leaning in closer, waiting. I hadn't slept properly since the clearing, the hollow clearing, and I kept replaying the small toys, the footprints, the faint giggling that had brushed against my ears as if it belonged to the shadows themselves. My headset sat heavy on the desk, my coffee cold and bitter beside me, as I tried to convince myself that tonight would be normal, that nothing would happen, that the forest, the boy, the tall man, they were all gone. Then the phone rang. I froze. The shrill tone cut through the silence of the station like a needle through glass. Something in me tightened instantly, a cold prickle running down my spine. I stared at it for longer than I should have before lifting the receiver. "Woman, what's your emergency?" I asked, voice flat, careful, professional. "Hello?" The voice was soft, small, trembling. My stomach lurched. My hands went cold. "Tommy," I whispered before I even realized I had said it. "Yes, it's me," the child answered, fear tangled with relief. I'm lost again." I swallowed hard, pressing the receiver closer, willing myself to remain calm. "Okay, Tommy, listen to me. You're safe. Can you tell me where you are?" I don't know. The trees. They're everywhere. I hear him. Behind me. He's smiling. He's waiting! Every instinct screamed at me. The words. The voice. It was the same boy, same tone, same panic as the night before. And yet, when I checked the number, my heart stopped. The line traced back to a dead exchange. Disconnected. No service. Nothing. I gripped the receiver tighter. "Tommy, listen to me. Can you stay where you are? Can you see a light or a road?" I think so. But he's there. He's always there. I can feel him. I can hear him laughing. I don't want him to touch me. I tried to speak calmly, but my throat was tight. "You're going to be okay. Officers are coming. Can you hear the sound of my voice?" "Yes, but he's near. I can feel it." He's watching me, smiling, waiting, Always waiting. The line crackled. Static hissed through the receiver, whispering faintly, overlapping with his words. And then I heard it. Faint giggling, high-pitched, unmistakable, too close. And not over the phone. It echoed in my ears like it existed in the room with me. I leaned back in my chair, shaking. My pulse thundered in my head. I'd heard that sound before, in the hollow clearing. That faint, impossible giggle, soft and teasing, brushing against the edges of my mind. It wasn't just a sound. It was intention, presence. "Tommy, keep talking to me," I said, voice shaking, though I forced calm over the line. "Stay with me. Tell me what you see." I see toys. Toys in circles. Footprints. Small ones and big ones. They're moving around me, and I can't... Static swallowed the rest of his words. The line cut. I slammed my fist against the desk, heart hammering. I tried to call back, traced the number again. Deadline. No service, nothing. The hairs on my arm stood on end. I remembered the hollow clearing, the patterns in the dirt, the careful toys, the faint giggling. And now it wasn't just in the forest. It was here, in my office, in the headset, echoing in my skull. I grabbed my radio. "Units copy? We have a possible sighting. Child lost. Same location as last night. Repeat, same general area. Static. No reply. Nothing. The air itself seemed thick. Waiting. Watching. I sank back in my chair, head in my hands, trying to make sense of it. How could the same child call again? How could it be the same voice, the same fear, and yet traced to a number that didn't exist? My mind raced, rational explanations and impossible thoughts colliding. And then I heard it clearly. The giggling inside my head, or maybe outside, maybe both. Faint, impossible, curling through my chest, brushing against my ears, teasing me, tugging at memory. I remembered the hollow clearing. The toys, arranged with care, the footprints circling them, disappearing as if swallowed by the earth. I forced myself to breathe. "It's okay," I whispered. "It's just a kid, just fear, just echoes." But I knew better. This wasn't just fear. This wasn't just echoes. The line, the voice, the number that didn't exist, they were signs, markers, warnings. Something was still out there. Something that could reach through the forest, through dead lines, into the quiet of the station, into my head. The phone rang again. My hand shook, hovering over it. When I picked it up, I didn't need to ask who it was. The trembling, frightened voice answered immediately. I'm scared. He's near." My throat went dry. "Tommy, listen, stay calm. Can you see anything that can help you? Toys, everywhere. Footprints. He's smiling." And then the static came back, hissing and whispering. And then, unmistakable, faint, a giggle just behind me in the room. I spun, chair scraping across the floor, flashlight shining over the empty room. Nothing. No one. Only shadows stretching too long, shapes that seemed to linger. I sank back into my chair, heart hammering, hands trembling. The line traced to nothing, the voice repeated, and yet I could feel it. The presence. Patient, watching, waiting. And in my mind, I saw it clearly, like the moonlight across the hollow clearing. Toys in deliberate patterns, footprints circling and disappearing, the giggling echoing endlessly. "Tommy," I whispered, voice barely audible. "It's going to be okay. Just stay with me. Stay where you are. I can't." He's moving closer. I can feel him. Smiling. Static again, then silence. I dropped the receiver, hands shaking. I could feel the giggling curling around me, impossible, teasing, like it had grown wings and settled in the corners of my mind. I remembered the tall man, the hollow clearing, the toys, the footprints, and I realized with a sinking certainty, whatever was out there, it wasn't just in the woods. It wasn't just around the child. It could reach and it could linger, patient, watching, smiling. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time didn't make sense. I couldn't stop thinking of the boy, lost in the trees, calling through a line that didn't exist. A child who might be real or might be a fragment of memory, reaching through static and shadow to touch the world of the living. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the station, every whisper of the wind outside, every crackle in the headset made my heart jump. I kept expecting the phone to ring again, expecting the voice to come back. And when it didn't, I felt worse. Because the silence was heavy, alive, pregnant with anticipation. The next day, I traced the call again. Deadline. Disconnected. No origin. Nothing. It didn't exist. And yet I could hear him. I could hear Tommy, the toys, the giggling. Patient, careful, deliberate. Always just out of reach, circling the edge of perception. Even now I can hear it in quiet moments. A soft laugh at the edge of my hearing. A whisper curling against my skin. The sense of tiny feet brushing against the floor of an empty room. The hollow clearing isn't just in the forest. It follows me. The boy follows me. And the tall man, patient and smiling, waits for someone to notice, someone to see. I've tried to rationalize it. Phones glitch. Children panic. Fatigue plays tricks. But I know what I heard. I know what I felt. And I know that the echoes of children, voices that trace to dead lines, cannot be explained. They are warnings, reminders, proof that the forest, the hollow spaces, the toys, the footprints, the tall man, they are real. All of it. Patient, waiting, watching, smiling, and I know somehow the boy is still out there. And I know somehow that whatever follows him will never stop. The night shift finally ended, or at least I thought it had. My legs ached from standing, my eyes burned from fluorescent lights that never seemed to turn off, and the hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. Most people leave at this hour, rushing home, clinging to sleep. But I had to finish my rounds. Check one last time that the wings were empty, that the patients were asleep, that the silence wasn't hiding something I didn't want to see. I walked down the corridor, shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, a quiet, rhythmic pulse that made the walls dance. I tried to focus on the sounds I knew, the distant beep of monitors, the soft hum of the ventilation, the occasional scuff of a janitor's cart somewhere far away. Everything else was quiet. Too quiet. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. At first I thought it was another nurse coming back from the break room, maybe checking on a patient. But the steps were slow, deliberate, echoing off the empty walls in a rhythm that didn't match anyone I knew. I froze, gripping my clipboard like it could somehow protect me. The sound wasn't right. Too heavy for a normal step, too soft to be entirely human. I whispered into my phone, my voice trembling. 911, I think someone's in the empty wing. The line clicked softly. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's calm voice said, I'm at St. Michael's, night shift. I'm alone here. I stammered, glancing over my shoulder down the long corridor. I hear footsteps. I don't see anyone. I've checked. Everyone's asleep, please. I don't know what to do. The operator's voice was steady, but I could hear the quiet concern underneath. Stay where you are. Can you lock yourself in a room? I guess so. My fingers shook as I reached for the nearest patient room, heart hammering. But the footsteps didn't stop. They shifted, coming closer from the direction I hadn't expected. From the hallway behind me, soft but deliberate, echoing as if bouncing off the walls just to tease me. I crouched behind a door, peeking into the empty hallway. Shadows stretched too long. The lights flickered again. Every instinct screamed that someone or something was there, watching, waiting. My mind raced, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was maintenance, a late-night cleaner. Maybe my exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But the sound didn't feel real. Not just the sound, the rhythm, the pressure of it against my chest. Hello? I whispered into the phone. It's moving. It's closer, please. Someone. The operator's voice came again. Calm. Professional. Stay on the line. Are you alone in the wing? Yes, I checked every room. Everyone's asleep. I've been alone for hours. And then the footsteps changed. The rhythm slowed, stopping just outside the nearest room. I could hear a pause like a breath, a momentary stillness that pressed against me, cold and suffocating. My fingers clutched the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. I can hear it, I whispered, voice barely audible. It's right outside. The operator said nothing, just waited, letting the silence stretch. And in that silence, I realized something worse than hearing the footsteps. the absence of sound around them, the empty space that should have been quiet, made the pressure of their presence unbearable. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, trying not to draw attention to myself. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't move fast without knowing where it would be. The hallway stretched endlessly, shadows curling in unnatural shapes as the lights flickered. Then a door creaked somewhere to my left. Just a little, a whisper of sound, but enough to make my stomach drop. The footsteps resumed, moving away now, fading into the distance, but not entirely gone. Echoes lingered, imprinting themselves in my ears, curling into my chest. I whispered again into the phone. It's moving down the hall. I think it's leaving. The operator's voice came back. You're doing great. Can you make it to the stairwell? You can exit the building safely from there. I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. My legs trembled as I inched down the corridor, flashlight bouncing across walls, doors, and the polished floor. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching, bending in ways that made me dizzy. I could feel it following, just out of sight, patient, waiting. When I reached the stairwell, I paused, catching my breath. The footsteps weren't there now, but the silence was heavier, filled with memory of what had just passed. I took a shaky breath and whispered, I'm almost out. I think it's gone. The operator said nothing for a moment, and then, soft but firm, keep moving. You're almost safe. Don't stop. I descended the stairs slowly, counting each step, the echo in the stairwell too loud, too clean. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the faint static between breaths, waiting for the footsteps to return. But they didn't. Not yet. When I reached the lobby, the automatic doors were closed, but the night shift janitor had left them unlocked. I pushed them open, stepping into the cold night air. The city was quiet, nothing like the hospital wing. I could hear the wind in the trees, the faint hum of traffic, the occasional distant siren. Normal. Safe. For the moment. I exhaled, leaning against the doors. My hands shook, phone still pressed to my ear. I'm out. I'm safe. The operator's voice was calm. Good. Take a few moments. Breathe. Help is on the way if you need it. Can you describe what you heard? I shook my head, almost in disbelief. I don't know. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Not human. I don't know. Just footsteps. Coming closer, pausing, watching, then leaving. Silence for a moment. You did the right thing. You stayed calm. You're safe now. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to put the night behind me. But the memory followed me, curling in my chest like smoke, persistent and cold. I kept hearing it even after the phone went dead. Footsteps echoing in my mind, slow and deliberate. Fading, returning, impossible to place. Even now, I hear them sometimes. When the lights flicker at home, when I'm walking down empty hallways, when I close my eyes at night, that rhythm, that weight, that patient presence that doesn't belong to anything human, yet moves with intent. I went back to the hospital the next day. Everything was normal. Empty hallways, polished floors, fluorescent lights buzzing. No trace of anyone there. No footprints. No sign of disturbance. Just silence. But I knew better. I knew what I had heard. I knew that whatever it was could wait, patient, outside of sight, curling in the quiet corners, watching, always watching. I tried to sleep afterward, but every creak in my apartment, every rustle in the street outside, made my chest tighten. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, just at the edge of hearing. Just outside the reach of sight, I tell myself it was stress, exhaustion, imagination. But deep down I know the truth. The hospital, the empty wing, the footsteps, they weren't gone. Not really. They were patient, waiting, watching, and I know one day they'll return. I never thought the hospital would feel smaller at night, more claustrophobic, more alive. After the call, after I finally left the empty wing, I tried to convince myself that the footsteps were just my mind playing tricks. Fatigue. Too many hours. The fluorescent lights making shadows stretch into shapes that weren't real. But deep down I knew better. I knew what I had heard. I knew something had followed me. I returned the next day to collect my things, to check on lost items, to make sense of the night that refused to end. The hospital was quiet, almost unnaturally so. No patients in the hallways I walked, no staff except for the day shift nurses, moving with their usual distracted efficiency. Everything was normal, or it should have been. I found my phone in the lobby. That was the first odd thing. I had left it on my desk after the call ended. It wasn't there. And yet, when I walked into the maintenance area, a nurse I didn't recognize was holding it. She handed it to me and my chest twisted. It was recording. A red dot blinking silently on the screen. My heart jumped. I pressed play. The first few seconds were normal. My voice trembling, whispering into the receiver. 911. Footsteps. I don't see anyone. My heartbeat quick, audible even in the recording. But then the elevator doors opened. The footage, or the audio, shifted. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps filled the recording, echoing through the elevator shaft in ways that shouldn't exist. I froze, gripping the phone so tightly it ached. The corridor outside the elevator was empty, the cleaning staff and nurses passing without noticing anything. And yet the phone recorded it. The steps stopped abruptly, replaced by my own whispers. It's moving. Closer. Then the elevator doors closed. I remember that moment. The doors had been fully open when I stepped inside to fetch the phone from a colleague earlier. Now on the recording, they closed silently, trapping something inside with me. My whispered voice trembled. It's here. Please. Don't! The red dot on the screen blinked faster, capturing every second. The footsteps began again, slow, deliberate, echoing around the elevator shaft. But they weren't mine. They circled, overlapping, brushing against metal walls, vibrating into the tiny space, pressing against my chest even through the recording. I pressed pause, my hands shaking, my stomach twisted. The elevator, that small metal box, suddenly felt like a coffin. The walls on the recording seemed to close in, shadows stretching into corners where none existed. My voice came again, quieter now, trembling more. I can hear it, so close. Can't! Static erupted for a moment, then faded into a faint giggling. I dropped the phone onto the counter, my breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. That sound, the faint, high-pitched laughter. Impossible. Just like the hollow clearing, just like the lost boy. Small, patient, waiting. I knew where my phone had been. The elevator between floors, the shaft somewhere in the middle of the hospital. No one uses it at night except staff. And even then, it usually waits on the lobby level, humming softly obedient. But the recording proved it had moved, or something had moved it. Something that could linger in metal and wires, in air, in the space between the floors. I replayed the recording, my own voice again, whispering. It's behind me. The steps, heavier now, closer, echoing impossibly, coming from the direction of the ceiling, the floor, everywhere at once. My chest tightened. Every nerve screamed that whatever was there had no respect for space, for doors, for walls, and then the final words. I can't. Get out. A scream, not my own, not human, followed. Then silence. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook violently. I wanted to throw the phone, to smash it against the floor, to erase it and pretend it never happened. But I couldn't, because it recorded something no one else would believe. Something impossible. Something that had been with me the night before and hadn't left. The elevator, I realized with a cold certainty, wasn't just a machine. It was a conduit, a place that could hold presence, intention, a place that could trap whatever had been following me, wait, and then let itself be heard again, even when no one was there. I thought back to the footsteps, to the hollow clearing, to the faint giggling that had lingered in my ears. It wasn't bound by walls or distance or reason. It could exist in the space between, pressing into memory, echoing in recordings, bending perception. I left the phone on the counter and stepped out into the hall, trying to steady myself. The hospital was still. Sunlight filtered weakly through high windows, reflecting off polished floors. And for a moment, I wanted to believe the nightmare had ended. That the night, the footsteps, the presence were gone. But when I glanced toward the elevators, I saw them. The doors weren't moving. They never had been. Yet I could feel the pressure again, the weight of something waiting inside, patient, silent, watching, smiling. I kept my distance. I told myself it was fear, imagination, exhaustion. But deep down, I knew better. I knew what the recording had shown. I knew the final words weren't just words. They were a message, a warning, proof that whatever had followed me into the hospital didn't need doors, didn't need floors. It existed in the space between, patient, waiting. Later, I replayed the recording again, alone in my apartment. Every sound, every whisper, every faint echo of footsteps pressed against me. I could hear the giggling, the overlapping steps, the trapped panic. And I realized something worse than the fear itself. It wasn't bound to the hospital anymore. It had learned, observed, adapted. It could reach anywhere. Even now, I think about that elevator, about the confined metal space, the doors, the walls, the impossible recording, about the last words I left behind, pressed into the tiny memory chip of my phone, still blinking red as if it were alive. I wonder if I'll ever hear them again. In a hallway, in an elevator, in the quiet of my apartment when no one else is around. Because it waits, always. Patient, patient and deliberate. In spaces too small to fit a presence. In sounds too faint to be real. In memories too fragile to endure. And I know somehow that whatever it is, it will always be there, recording, observing, smiling. I answered the first call just before midnight. It was the kind of night that made the world feel smaller, the roads tighter, the air heavier. Everything outside the dispatch room felt still, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights above and the low buzz of the radios. What's your emergency?" I said, voice steady, practiced, screaming. That was all I heard at first. High-pitched, frantic, shredding the quiet night, echoing in my eardrums. I leaned forward, heart hammering. "Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening?" Static. Then her voice again, screaming. Words I couldn't make out, broken by terror. "Please, help him, don't—" The line went dead. I cursed under my breath. It was mile marker 19, a stretch of highway so isolated even the highway patrol dreaded it at night. I pulled up the location and pinged the nearest unit. My fingers trembled, though I tried to keep my voice calm. Minutes later, the phone rang again. I answered before it could ring more than twice. What? What's your emergency? The screaming, raw, ragged, as if it were tearing her throat apart from the inside. I could hear cars passing somewhere far off, wind rattling something metal, and beneath it all, a deep, urgent panic. Don't let him, please! Then silence. Static. I hit redial, tried calling back. No answer. Deadline. I logged it, repeated the location, and tried to track any units nearby. My stomach twisted. Something about the way she screamed, the cadence, the fear, it wasn't just terror. It was pleading, personal, directed, and the highway. It was empty. Always empty. Another call. Same number, same line. I picked up immediately. What's your emergency? Screaming, shrieking, and then suddenly a whisper, just beneath the panic. Don't let him see you. I leaned back, gripping the receiver so tight my knuckles ached. My mind raced. Was this a prank? Someone messing with us? But no, the fear was real. I could hear it. I could feel it, echoing through the line like a pulse, pressing into my chest. "Ma'am, stay on the line. Can you tell me where you are?" 19, mile marker. "He's behind me, coming!" Then static again, a sharp, high-pitched crackle. When it cleared, the scream had stopped. Silence. I sat there, heart racing, trying to rationalize. Maybe she'd driven off. Maybe someone had picked her up. But the sound of her fear lingered in the receiver like smoke in a room. I could still hear it, even though the line was dead. The third call came 30 minutes later. I answered faster than I thought possible, already dreading the sound. "What's your emergency?" Screaming again, but different this time. Closer, sharper, fragmented. "Don't! He's coming!" "Help, please." I noted it, repeated the location, called dispatch for the nearest officer. My voice shook despite myself. Something about the pattern, the repeated calls, the precise location, made me feel like she was stuck. Stuck in that spot, screaming. And the line was the only thing connecting her to the world. I could hear faint wind, maybe her breath, maybe his. The static under her voice twisted and pulsed, almost like it had a rhythm of its own. I tried to stay calm, but every second stretched, every pause between screams like a finger tapping my chest. "Ma'am, do you see anyone? Can you describe them? He, tall, dark. Eyes, please." The line died again. Dead. I hit redial, hoping, praying. Nothing. I leaned back, closed my eyes for a second, tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself that maybe it was just someone drunk or lost or playing a sick game. But I knew better. There was something in her terror, something patient and deliberate that didn't belong to the normal world. The fourth call came less than an hour later. "Same number, same location," I answered immediately, hand trembling. "One, what's your emergency?" Screaming again, raw, ragged, closer, almost behind me this time. "Help, don't let him, please." I tried to keep calm, but my stomach knotted. I imagined the highway, empty, moonlight bouncing off asphalt, the dark outline of trees, the sense of being watched. And somewhere out there, a woman screaming, pleading, and a presence that followed her, patient, deliberate, closing in. I traced the call again, checked our patrol units. Nothing. The area was empty, always empty. No cars, no lights, nothing. And yet her voice persisted. Through the line, through the static, through my memory, I kept logging everything, repeating the location, making notes. Her final words cut short, etched into my mind. "Please, don't dead line." I couldn't shake it. Even after I finished my shift, even when I got home and shut the door, her voice lingered. High-pitched, desperate, breaking into my thoughts like it had taken root there. I lay awake listening for the wind outside my window, imagining her running along mile marker 19, hearing him behind her, not knowing if she'd escape. I went back to sleep eventually, or at least I tried. But when I closed my eyes, I could still hear the screaming, not just in my head, the faintest echo of it, like the line was still open, still connected, still reaching. And I knew deep down she was still there. Somewhere along that stretch of highway, running, screaming, watched by something patient, silent, smiling. I was on the night shift again. The kind that stretches time and memory until the dark feels like it's pressing against your chest. Mile marker 19. The same stretch I'd heard over the dispatch line a few nights ago. The screaming woman. The calls had stopped, or at least the lines had gone dead, but I couldn't shake it. Something about that place stayed with me. It didn't belong on a map, didn't belong in memory, but it lingered like smoke in a room that had long been abandoned. I was supposed to check the highway, see if any cars had gone off the road, any signs of trouble. Patrol car 043 hummed beneath me, lights off, radio silent, save for the faint hiss of static. The world outside the windshield was black and endless, trees crowding the edges of the asphalt like sentinels. The road was empty, always empty. I drove slowly, careful, hands gripping the wheel, the dash cam recording every mile. The camera was new, shiny, cold, and I kept telling myself it would prove nothing, that this would all be routine. But deep down, I feared it wouldn't be. It started with a shadow. I saw it first in the periphery, a flicker across the road. I squinted. Nothing. Just trees, mist, the shine of the wet asphalt under my headlights. I told myself I was tired, imagining things, the mind playing tricks in the quiet dark. Then I saw it again, clearer. A figure standing in the middle of the road. A woman or a man, hard to tell, silhouetted, still. My breath caught. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering, pulse rattling my skull. The dash cam recorded everything, and that's when it got worse. I looked at the screen and the figure disappeared. Not blurred by motion. Frame by frame, it simply wasn't there. 1 second standing silent. The next, gone. I blinked. My chest tightened. I whispered to myself, No, that's not real. I looked again. Empty road, nothing. Just asphalt stretching ahead, trees pressing in from either side. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was fog. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe my eyes tricked me in the way darkness likes to play with perception. But then I looked at the dash cam playback. Frame by frame, I saw the figure standing, tall, thin, unbroken silhouette. And then frame by frame it faded, dissolving into the asphalt, into the night, leaving nothing but cold air and fear. I swallowed hard, tried to keep moving, tried to breathe. The radio crackled faintly, static whispering, and I realized with a cold twist in my stomach, I wasn't alone on this road. Not really. I kept driving, slow, careful, scanning the edges, checking the mirrors, every instinct screaming. The road stretched endlessly, empty, but I could feel it. Presence, patient, waiting. Just beyond sight, brushing the edges of perception, pressing into the spaces my eyes couldn't reach. Then the figure appeared again, closer this time, standing in the center of the lane, impossibly still, impossibly calm. I froze. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, only stare. And then, just like before, it vanished, frame by frame, fading from the road, as though the night itself swallowed it. I pulled over, heart hammering, knees weak. My hands shook as I reviewed the dash cam. The footage was clear. The figure existed. It disappeared. It existed again, and somewhere between those frames, I understood I was seeing something that didn't obey reality, something patient, deliberate, unbound. I called dispatch, voice low, trembling, careful. Unit 43, I'm on mile marker 19. There's someone standing in the road, but they keep disappearing. The dashcam shows them. I don't understand, Static answered me. Then nothing. The line dropped. I tried again. No response. The silence of the highway pressed against me, and I realized with a cold certainty this stretch of road wasn't empty. Not ever. I drove again, slow, keeping headlights sweeping the edges. My mind raced. Could this be connected to the screaming woman? Was she still out here? Or worse, had she never been there at all? Was the road itself haunted? A place that could imprint terror on anyone who looked too closely? The figure appeared once more, standing a few hundred feet ahead. I froze, breath fogging the windshield. My chest was tight. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. And then, before I could move, it was gone. Nothing. Just road. Just darkness. I reviewed the dash cam footage again. Each frame confirmed it. There. Gone. There. Gone. No blur, no trick of light. Only absence where presence should have been. And each time it vanished, I could feel it. Watching. Waiting. Patient. I parked on the shoulder, shaking. My mind screamed at me to leave, to drive away, but something kept me there, tethered to the road, tethered to the unseen watcher. I wanted proof, evidence. Something solid to show dispatch, to show anyone. But the dashcam only proved what I feared. Reality bent here, distorted, patient, deliberate. Minutes passed, or hours. Time felt wrong on that stretch. Each time I tried to drive, I saw the figure again. Closer now, sometimes at the edge of headlights, sometimes just beyond. Every blink of my eyes, every shift of focus, it moved with a patience that no human could have. No urgency, no haste. Just deliberate, patient observation. I remembered the screaming woman. Her final words cut short, pleading. I imagined her running along this stretch, hearing him or it behind her. I imagined her trying to escape, frame by frame, disappearing into the night, leaving only echoes. I realized then that the road itself was alive with it. Patient. Waiting. It didn't need a body to haunt. It didn't need to be caught in a frame to exist. It pressed against reality, testing the edges, smiling in silence. I drove off eventually, hands still shaking, eyes wide. The figure didn't appear again. Not in headlights, not in mirrors, not in any recording I could see. But I knew better. I knew it hadn't left. Even now I feel it. The presence in the dark corners of memory. In the spaces between frames, between breaths, pressing against my chest, patient, observant, smiling, waiting. I don't think I'll ever drive that stretch alone again. Not at night, not ever. And I know deep down the figure waits. Always patient, always deliberate. And someday, someone else will see it frame by frame and understand what I already know. Mile marker 19 doesn't forgive. Mile marker 19 doesn't forget. It waits. And when it chooses, it collects what it needs, one frame at a time. I didn't know what to expect when we got the call. The dispatcher's voice had that edge. Quiet, almost too calm. But underneath it, the tension bled through. Unit 43, abandoned vehicle, mile marker 19. Engine running. Doors open. Mile marker 19. The name made my stomach twist. I'd been there before, but it was different seeing it for myself this time, in the middle of the night, headlights cutting through the fog. The road was slick from recent rain, silver under the beams. Trees crowded the edges, shadows deep and heavy. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to leave it alone. But you don't ignore a running engine with a baby seat still buckled inside. We arrived silently. The car was a sedan, older model, dark blue. Doors wide open, engine still idling, the warmth curling out like smoke. The inside smelled faintly of air freshener and something else. Something sharp, metallic, almost sweet. The baby seat caught my eye immediately. Empty, still strapped in. Buckled tightly, like someone had left in a hurry or like someone had been removed carefully. My throat tightened. My fingers shook and I found myself gripping the doorframe of our patrol car, not sure why I needed the anchor. Unit 43, any sign of the driver? My partner asked, voice low. I shook my head, words failing me. Everything felt wrong. The air around the sedan seemed thicker, the fog curling into strange shapes at the edges of the headlights. I could almost see movement there, subtle, impossible to place. I stepped closer to the sedan, flashlight cutting across the interior. The back seat was empty. No sign of struggle, no discarded items except the seatbelt still secured in the baby seat. It felt staged, wrong, like a message left for someone to find. I shined the light across the dashboard. Keys were in the ignition, engine running, radio silent, no cell phone, nothing, just the empty seats and the soft hum of the engine. I stepped back, breathing uneven, heart hammering. "Someone's here," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant the driver or something else. My partner laughed, a hollow sound. "Don't start, man, just someone ditched the car." I didn't laugh. Couldn't. My eyes kept darting to the fog. Shadows that weren't shadows. Shapes in the corners of my vision that vanished when I looked directly at them. I opened the driver's door carefully. Nothing inside except the worn seat and the faint smell of leather and wet earth. Keys still in ignition. Engine running. Then I saw it. On the floor mat. Tiny footprints. Barely visible. Smeared faintly into the damp carpet. I froze. Heart racing. Small. Child-sized. Fresh. Too fresh. I whispered into the radio. Unit 43. "We have footprints. Small. Possibly a child." Static crackled. "Copy, Unit 43. Proceed with caution." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The fog pressed in around the car, curling in ways it shouldn't, wrapping the vehicle in mist like it had been waiting for us. I checked the back seat again, empty, but the baby seat, I couldn't shake it, buckled, waiting, silent, patient. The fog shifted, and I swear I saw movement across the road. A figure, small, standing just at the edge of the tree line, barely visible. Dark silhouette against darker fog, watching. "Did you see that?" I hissed, pointing. My partner glanced, shook his head. "Probably a deer." "Get a grip, man." I nodded, but I couldn't shake it. My chest tightened. Something was out there. Something patient, watching, waiting. I opened the passenger door. Nothing, silent, empty. And yet the feeling followed me. Cold and heavy, pressing against my spine, crawling into my shoulders, settling like lead in my chest. I stepped back, shone the flashlight across the road. Empty. The fog swirled, thickening, moving as if alive. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, silver black under our headlights, nothing there except silence. Then a sound, soft, high-pitched, faint, almost imperceptible. Giggle? Cry? I couldn't place it. But it came from the trees, from the fog, from nowhere and everywhere. My stomach twisted. I froze. My partner muttered something about wind. I didn't hear it. I only heard that sound. Tiny, patient, waiting. I could feel it pressing into the car, into me, like the night itself was alive, watching, hungry for attention. I leaned closer to the back seat. The baby seat, empty, buckled, engine running. And then I saw it, faint on the leather strap, a smear of wetness. Not blood, something else. Warm, sticky. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't look away. I whispered again into the radio. Unit 43, engines running, backseat empty. Baby seat. Something wet on the strap. Possibly evidence. Proceed with caution. There was no answer. Only static. I stepped back. Tried to shake off the feeling. Tried to be rational. Exhaustion. Fog. My mind playing tricks. But deep down, I knew better. Something had been here. Something had left, but not completely. Something lingering in the corners, in the engine hum, in the fog curling around the tires. I glanced across the road again. Shadows pressed against the edges, shifting, almost human in shape. Then gone. Frame by frame, disappearing into the mist. Just like the dash cam from the last call. Just like the shadows I couldn't place. Patient. Deliberate. Watching. The engine hummed, idling, waiting. I could feel it vibrating through the floorboards, into my shoes, into my chest. I swallowed hard, gripping the car door for balance. My partner spoke then. "We need to get this documented. Call it in." "Backup's on the way." I nodded, but my eyes kept darting to the fog. The figure from before? Gone. Or was it never there? I didn't trust my eyes anymore. We took photos, notes, checked the area. Nothing. No footprints besides the tiny ones inside the car. No signs of the driver. No other vehicles. Only the running engine, the buckled baby seat, the fog curling around the tires like it belonged there, like it had been waiting for us. I climbed back into our patrol car, engine cold against my palms, though the sedan behind us still hummed, alive, patient. The fog thickened, swallowing the road behind us. I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw a shape, small at the edge of the headlights, then gone. Driving away, I couldn't stop thinking about the baby seat. Empty, buckled, waiting. Like the car itself knew we'd come. Like it wanted us to see it, to remember it. I replayed the dash cam later. Frame by frame, the same impossibility I'd seen before. Fog curling in unnatural shapes. Shadows that shouldn't exist. Tiny footprints appearing on the floor mat that hadn't been there before. Movement at the edge of visibility, disappearing when I tried to focus. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to. But I knew the truth. Whatever had been in that car, whatever had left those tiny footprints, wasn't bound by doors or logic or reason. It existed in the gaps, the space between the engine hum and silence, the fog and the trees, the dash cam frames and my eyes, patient, deliberate, waiting. Even now I can feel it. A presence that doesn't belong in the world, pressing against memory, pressing against reason, pressing against my chest. That abandoned sedan, it wasn't empty. Not really. Not ever. And I know, if I go back, it will still be there. Engine running. Doors open. Baby seat buckled. Waiting. Patient. I never thought I'd see it again. That particular chill. The one that crawls up your spine and settles in your chest like a weight you can't shake. Not until I found the tape in the dispatch archives. It was tucked in a cardboard box, yellowed with age, labeled in scrawled handwriting. Mile marker 19, emergency calls. I had been organizing old records for clearance, shuffling through dusty boxes filled with files, old radios, and outdated equipment. That box was heavy, solid. Something about it made the hair on my neck rise. I found the tape on the bottom. A reel-to-reel, worn but intact. The kind that hadn't been played in decades. The label was simple. Emergency calls, 1995. My hands shook as I placed it in the player. Static at first. Low buzzing hum, then voices. High-pitched, frantic, desperate. I froze. The first voice was unmistakable. A woman, screaming, pleading. "Please! Someone help!" Her words cut through the years, brittle and raw. My stomach tightened. Mile marker 19. The same stretch. The same isolated road I had been called to more times than I could count. The same place where the screaming woman, the vanished driver, the abandoned sedan haunted memory and records alike. Another voice joined hers. Male, older, shaking. "We're here! Stay calm!" "We're coming!" Static, a gap. Then the screaming again, sharper, more fractured, pleading, faint laughter under it. Not joyful, but patient, waiting. I leaned forward, pressing the player closer, gripping the edges of the table. I could hear the road beneath the voices, the wind, tires, or maybe footsteps. I wasn't sure anymore. 2 decades separated me from this recording, but it was alive. It pressed into the room, into the quiet, into my chest. The voices repeated. Same tone, same cadence, the woman's voice breaking. The man trying to reassure her. I recognized the pattern immediately. Same panic, same presence, the same unplaceable fear I had felt on sight in recent nights. I played it again, and again, frame by frame of sound. Each playback pressed deeper into memory, pulling me toward the fog, toward the road, toward the shadows I had been chasing. The tape's static warped sometimes. Voices overlapped in strange ways, as though the recording itself couldn't contain them. Help! Don't let him! The words cut across one another, phrases bleeding together. I could barely tell where one voice ended and another began, and then I heard it, the faintest echo beneath the voices. A sound that didn't belong, patient, deliberate, waiting, high-pitched, almost imperceptible, like it existed just beyond comprehension. I sat back, hands trembling, and pressed stop. The silence in the archive room was thick, heavy, pressing into me like the fog on mile marker 19. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was old tape warping, sounds overlapping with static. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe imagination. But deep down, I knew better. I played the tape again, slower this time. Not just to hear, but to listen. Frame by frame of sound, each desperate plea, each echo of panic, and beneath it, the same patient presence I had felt in the car, in the fog, in the dash cam. Something that didn't obey reality. Something that waited. Voices begged for help. Names called. Locations given. Always the same road. Always the same stretch. Over and over. Each recording separated by years. 1995, 1998, 2001. And every time a scream that cut short. Silence that pressed into the tape like it had memory, consciousness, intention. I couldn't leave it. I couldn't turn away. Something about the recording was alive, pressing into me, testing me, and I realized that if the tape existed, so did the thing it recorded. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I closed my eyes for a second, imagining the road. Empty, silent, fog curling like smoke, shadows pressing against trees, and in the middle of it, voices, echoes of panic, repeating endlessly, frame by frame, like the road had been trapping them for decades. Like the road itself remembered fear. I couldn't stop thinking about the screaming woman. The abandoned sedan, the dash cam footage, everything aligned now. Not coincidentally, not randomly. It was all the same presence, threading through time, patient, deliberate, collecting memory, panic, fear. I tried to fast forward the tape to find anything concrete. But the more I listened, the more fragmented it became. Static, faint whispers, overlapping voices that didn't make sense together, but all seemed to come from the same place. The same road, the same mile marker. I realized with cold certainty that the presence didn't just exist in the living. It had been there before all along, leaving traces in the recorded cries of the desperate. 20 years. Voices pressed into tape, into memory, into every record left behind, waiting for someone to listen. I shivered. My hands shook. My chest tightened. I wanted to stop. I wanted to throw the tape away. But the voices, pleading, frightened, raw, kept me. The sound pressed into the room, into the air, into me, and I realized it didn't matter that the tape was old. It was alive, patient, waiting. I imagined the people on the tape, running, calling for help, never reaching safety. The male voice trying to reassure. The female voice breaking into panic. And beneath it all, the faint, deliberate laughter. Not human, not joyful, patient, observant, hungry. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe my mind was connecting dots that didn't exist. But the pattern was too perfect. 20 years, same road, same presence, same desperate cries, frame by frame, decade by decade, pressed into the recordings. And now I was listening. Now I was part of it. The tape ended finally, or so I thought. The last seconds were silence, but the presence remained. Patient. In the hum of the tape deck. In the air around me. In my own chest, pressing, insistent. I could still feel it, waiting, deliberate, as if it had just paused, not gone. I rewound it, played it again, and again. Each playback pulled me deeper. The voices, the fear, the patient observer that never left, pressing into the present from decades past. Each frame of sound a memory trapped. Each plea for help a thread connecting the living to the thing that fed on it. I realized then that it didn't care about time. 2 decades, 20 years didn't matter. Presence didn't need bodies. It needed memory, fear, panic, the small, desperate moments pressed into the tape, into radios, into recordings, into anything that could preserve it. Waiting, patient, deliberate. I sat back, hands trembling, the tape still spinning. Outside, the quiet of the archive room pressed against me. Nothing else existed, and yet I felt it. That same weight I had felt on mile marker 19. That same patient presence watching, testing, waiting. I knew then that every recording, every abandoned call, every screaming plea for help from the past was not just history. It was alive, and now it was here, pressing into me, patient, deliberate, waiting. Even after I left the archives, even after I tried to sleep, I could hear it. Faint, in the back of my mind. Patient. Waiting. 20 years or 20 seconds, it didn't matter. It existed beyond time, pressing, observing, collecting memory, collecting fear. And I knew if I ever went back to that stretch of road, the mile marker 19, I would find it there. Waiting. Patient. Deliberate. Always. I should have left the building hours ago. My shift ended at midnight, but the weight of the calls, old and new, screaming and static, had pressed into me all night, leaving me drained and raw. I packed my things slowly, methodically, trying to force myself out of the dispatch room, away from the hum of the fluorescent lights, away from the faint echo of panic that lingered in the walls. Outside, the night was cold, sharp. My breath fogged in short bursts as I walked to my car, parking lot empty, dim streetlights flickering. Everything should have felt normal, mundane even. But there was an undercurrent, a pulse I couldn't shake. That stretch of highway, mile marker 19, wasn't far from the edge of the town, and it followed me here, in memory, in dread, in silence. I slid into my car, keys in hand, and started the engine. The heater hummed, fogged the windows, tried to fight the chill. I turned the radio to any station, anything to drown out the hum of the night and the thoughts that crept in. Static, the usual. Nothing unusual until I heard it. At first, it was faint. Almost too faint to notice, buried beneath the low buzz of the dashboard and the heater. High-pitched, frantic, barely audible. Then it grew clearer, screaming, raw, ragged, frantic, pleading. I froze. Hands on the wheel, heart hammering. It was her voice. The same voice from mile marker 19. The same cadence, the same raw panic, the same pleading cries that had haunted dispatch recordings, dash cams, and old tapes. I clicked the radio knob. Tried to change the station. Nothing. Every dial, every frequency, same scream, same desperate pleading. Please, don't let him... Help. Someone. Please! I leaned forward, gripping the wheel tight. My own pulse sounded deafening in my ears. The streetlights flickered as if responding to the sound. My car wasn't moving, but the world around me felt suspended, fragile, waiting. I tried to rationalize. Maybe someone on the radio had called in another emergency. Maybe it was an old emergency frequency somehow still broadcasting, but it wasn't background noise. It was deliberate, personal, directed at me. Pressing into me, I tried the car phone. Nothing, no signal. The world outside was quiet, empty, ordinary, and yet the screaming persisted. Frame by frame, second by second, it pressed into my consciousness. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I remembered every call, every dash cam, every abandoned sedan, every archive tape. 20 years of fear, repeating, echoing across time and space. And now, here, in my own car, it found me again. I tried to block it out, turned the radio off. Pressed buttons, knobs, all of them. Static hissed in protest. The pleading didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, sharper. My chest ached. My fingers gripped the wheel until the skin burned. I whispered to myself, trying to stay sane. It's not real. It's not real. It's just in your head. But I knew it was real. I could feel it pressing into the seat, the steering wheel, the air around me. Something patient, deliberate, observing, waiting for me to understand, waiting for me to acknowledge its presence. I rolled the windows down. Cold night air whipped in, fogging the glass further. I half expected the scream to fade, to be swallowed by the wind. But it didn't. The voice followed, weaving through the cold, curling around the car like smoke, pleading, desperate, unrelenting. I thought about turning back, going back to the station. But I knew there was nothing there that could stop it. The tape, the dash cam, the abandoned sedan, none of it was bound by time or place. This presence existed beyond that. Always patient, always deliberate, always waiting. I tried the radio again. Every station, static. Then the scream, louder, more urgent. "Help, please! Don't let him!" The line cut, then resumed as if the world itself had paused to listen. I gripped the wheel tighter. My knuckles white. My mind raced. Every call, every scream, every abandoned record, now they weren't just memories. They were warnings. They were threads pulling me into the same space, the same timeline, the same pattern. I tried to drive, feet on the pedals, hands shaking. But the road outside seemed wrong, familiar yet distorted, empty but crowded with shadows at the edge of my vision. I blinked. Nothing. But I knew something was there, patient, watching, waiting. The scream shifted. Now it sounded closer inside the car. Behind me? Beside me? I couldn't tell. I could feel the vibrations pressing through the dashboard, through the seat, into my chest. My breath caught in my throat. I tried calling dispatch again, my own voice shaking. "Dispatch? 911. I hear the same. Please, I don't know what's happening." Static swallowed me. No response. Dead line. Silence outside. But the voice persisted, curling around me, pressing into every nerve, every thought. I thought about the baby seat in the abandoned sedan. Empty, buckled, waiting. About the tiny footprints, frame by frame, disappearing from dashcam footage. About the archived tapes, every desperate voice, 20 years of fear repeating like a loop. And now, here it was again. Not on tape, not on the road, but in my car. Personal, targeted, patient. I gripped the wheel until my palms burned. Tried to reason, exhaustion, imagination. The mind playing tricks under the weight of too many night shifts. But the screams were not imagination. They were deliberate. They were alive. They were pressing into my chest. Into my mind, into my memory, I drove, slowly, hands tight, eyes darting. The radio static hissed. Then the scream returned, sharper, frantic, pleading. I tried to reach for anything that could silence it. Any station, any knob, any device. Nothing worked. The sound persisted, patient, deliberate, waiting. I remembered every detail from the previous encounters. The empty highway, the fog curling like smoke, the shadows that vanished when I looked directly, the presence that existed between frames, in gaps of memory, between breaths. Now it existed in my own car, following, watching, patient. I tried to think about anything else. Childhood memories, my family, safe places. But the screaming threaded through every thought, pulling, insistent, urgent. I could feel it in my chest, in my ears, in my hands. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I realized then I wasn't just hearing it. I was part of it. Part of the timeline, part of the pattern. Every scream I had logged, every dashcam, every tape in the archives. Now they all connected, and I was the latest node. The next voice waiting to be recorded, to be trapped, frame by frame, in memory, in static, in air. I wanted to stop. I wanted to pull over. I wanted to leave the car, run into the night, escape. But I knew there was no escape. Not from the road. Not from the presence. Not from the patient, deliberate observer that had threaded itself through decades, waiting for someone to hear, to feel, to remember. The screaming grew louder, insistent, frantic. I pressed my hands to my ears. But it didn't stop. The static pressed against my skull. The presence pressed against my chest. I could feel it curling around me, in the car, in the night, in the very space around me. Waiting. Patient. Deliberate. I drove on, headlights cutting through fog, windshield wet with condensation, mind racing. Every blink, every breath, every frame of thought pressed me closer to understanding, closer to the truth, that this presence, this patient, deliberate thing, existed outside of reason, and it would not be denied. I will never forget the way it pressed into me that night. The scream through my car radio, the static, the patient, deliberate waiting, the realization that the calls never end. They never stopped. They never will. Frame by frame, year by year, scream by scream, patient, deliberate, waiting. Even now, long after I left the road, long after I parked the car and walked inside, I can hear it faintly. Through the hum of the city, through the background noise, through memory itself. Night calls never end. Not for the screaming, not for the desperate. Not for those patient, deliberate observers pressing through the years, frame by frame, waiting. I didn't expect to get a call like that. Not this time, not tonight. The night had been quiet at the dispatch center, too quiet. Phones blinking in the dim light, screens glowing, but no urgent voices. Just the hum of computers, the low whir of fans, and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights above. Then the line rang. Sharp, insistent. My hand hovered for a moment. Then I answered. Voice steady. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end was frantic, high-pitched, terrified. A man, or maybe a woman. I couldn't tell immediately, the line crackling with static, but the panic was unmistakable. They're in the lake. People drowning! I blinked. My mind stuttered. Lake? I asked, trying to ground myself. Which lake? Who's calling? The line shook. A muffled cry. Please, hurry! They're under! I can hear them screaming! I leaned forward, pen poised over the log sheet. Ma'am, sir, calm down. Tell me where this is happening. What lake? There was a pause. Long enough for me to think the line had gone dead. Then a whisper, faint, desperate. The lake! The frozen lake. I froze. My stomach sank. I knew the lake. Everyone in town knew it, the one they closed off every winter. Ice thick enough to hold snowmobiles. Ice thick enough that drowning wasn't supposed to happen. Not now, not tonight. I swallowed. Frozen? Are you sure? Yes. Please, someone's trapped. I hear them. Static surged. A low hum under the voice, like water moving under ice. I could hear muffled screams distorted by the line, pressed down distant but horrifyingly clear. And then a sound that didn't make sense, cracking ice, sharp, close, echoing in my mind more than the phone. I called for backup. The same words spilling from my mouth almost automatically. Unit 12, check Lakeview Park, frozen lake. Possible victims trapped beneath ice. Outside, snow drifted lazily. I could hear the wind pushing against the building. But the line kept feeding me more horror, screams, cries, voices overlapping. Children? Adults? I couldn't tell. It was all muffled, pressed beneath some invisible surface, like the ice itself was swallowing them whole. I tried to guide the caller. Stay calm, stay calm. How many people? Where are they exactly? Static. Then, I don't know. Can't see. Only here. Hurry! I leaned back in my chair, hands trembling slightly. My heart pounded. Something about the clarity of the voices, the desperation, felt wrong. Not the typical panic of someone calling from ashore. These voices were under, buried, pressed down, patient, waiting. I could feel it pressing into me through the phone, through the silence between words, through the static. I imagined them trapped under ice, screaming, pressing against the frozen surface, and I knew I couldn't help them. Not physically, not now, not ever. I traced the line back. Nothing. Caller ID showed blocked. No trace, no coordinates, only the sound. The voices pressed into the receiver, into my ears, into my chest. I grabbed the old maps of the lake. Snow-covered, frozen solid, shallow, and deep sections marked, paths and roads leading to the shore. Nothing in my training prepared me for what I heard. Voices faint, desperate, layered one over another, pressing, waiting. I tried speaking into the line again, my voice shaking. Can you tell me your names? Anyone with me? Anything to help me? Silence, then a laugh. Faint, not joyful, patient, waiting. Too precise, deliberate. I felt the temperature drop in the room. My breath fogged. And for a moment I thought I could see the ice, the lake stretching infinitely, shadows moving just beneath the surface. I pressed record on the line, hands trembling. Every second mattered. Every word, every crackle, every echo could disappear if I didn't. The voices returned, stronger, desperate, frantic, overlapping. Children screaming, adults pleading, some words clear. Help!
Don't leave us, please!
I couldn't move. Couldn't look away. Couldn't stop the shiver that ran from my neck down to my spine. The dispatcher's office, cold, quiet, fluorescent hum, melted away, replaced by the frozen lake, the cracking ice, the unseen thrashing beneath. I whispered to myself, trying to rationalize. It's a prank. Old phone lines. Someone messing with the system. You've handled worse. But my chest tightened. The sound pressed too close, too real. My mind conjured figures beneath the ice, pale faces pressed against frozen surfaces, eyes wide, mouths open, screaming through solid crystal. And the patient presence, deliberate, listening, observing, waiting, curled in the darkness beyond my imagination. I grabbed the phone, trying to ask the questions that might save them. Names, ages, location, anything. The line spat back only static, whispers, overlapping screams. And then, softly, faintly, I could hear my own name, not on the line, not spoken aloud, but carried on the hiss of static, drawn out, patient, deliberate, waiting. I dropped the receiver, heart racing, hands shaking. My vision blurred slightly. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the hum of fluorescent lights was deafening. I pressed my forehead to the desk. Breath shaky. I tried again. Picked up the phone. The voices were quieter now, but unmistakable. Pressing, waiting, crying, desperate. 20 years of winter nights, frozen lakes, abandoned calls, desperate voices, and now me. A new recipient, a witness, a conduit, patient, deliberate, waiting. I pressed my palms to my face, tried to imagine anything else. My home, my bed, anything warm and safe, but the ice beneath voices stretched infinitely. Cracks forming, sounds pressed through solid crystal. I could hear them moving, waiting, patient. And then faintly the laugh again. Not human, deliberate, waiting. I picked up the line again, voice trembling. I'm here. I'm listening. I'll help. Static swallowed my words. The call ended abruptly, but the pressing remained. Cold, patient, deliberate, waiting. I sank into my chair. Fogged windows, dim lights, the hum of the building, the world felt thin, fragile. And I could still hear the lake beneath it all. Voices screaming, pressing, waiting. I stayed there until morning. Couldn't move. Couldn't leave. Couldn't shake the sound pressed into my chest. My own heartbeat sounded loud, echoing, a reminder that I was alive. But the voices, patient, deliberate, waiting, had chosen me. I knew that if I ever went back to that lake, to that frozen surface, I wouldn't find the shore empty. I would hear them again, screaming, thrashing, pressing against solid ice, waiting. And the presence, patient, deliberate, watching, would be there too. Always, waiting. Even now I can hear them. Beneath the ice, beneath memory, through the lines. The voices never leave. They never end. They never stop. Patient, deliberate, waiting. The morning was bitter. Frost clung to everything, a crystalline shroud over the lake. My boots crunched over hardened snow as I followed the rescue team to the frozen edge, the sun weak, pale, barely cutting through the fog that hung low over the ice. The world felt unreal, silent, heavy, waiting. I could still hear the voices from last night in my head, pressed against my skull, screaming beneath frozen water, patient, deliberate, waiting. I wanted to tell myself it had been my imagination, some trick of the headset, fatigue, the long hours. But standing here, staring at the thick sheet of ice, I knew it wasn't. It couldn't be. The first rescuer tapped the ice with a long pole. A hollow sound rang out, sharp, echoing across the frozen expanse. My stomach tightened. The ice was solid, thick, but the hollowness beneath it made the world feel fragile. Paper thin. Ready to give. Stay back, the officer said. his voice calm, but I could feel the tension in his shoulders. "We need to find weak points. See if anyone's trapped." I nodded, but my eyes were drawn to the shadows beneath the surface. Faint shapes, darker than the ice around them. Moving, deliberate, not random, not debris or trapped air. They swam under the ice like silent predators, waiting, watching. I pressed closer, but the officer held a hand up. "Don't get too close. It's unstable." My pulse raced, not from danger of falling, but from the movement beneath me. Shadows shifting, synchronized, whispering. At first I thought it was the wind over the ice, the echo bouncing back. But then I realized the whispers weren't random. They spoke in unison. Same words, same tone, faint but unmistakable. "Help. Don't leave. Please." I stumbled back, cold pressing into my bones. My fingers trembled. I wanted to call the dispatcher, call for backup, anything, but my voice caught in my throat. The shadows weren't alive in the sense I expected. They weren't human, not yet. But they weren't empty, not silent. They carried memory, desperation, panic, and some cruel patience. The rescuers worked quickly. They drilled small holes, tapped ice, shouted directions, tried to gauge the thickness. I followed every move, careful not to step too close. But every motion made the whispers louder, insistent, deliberate. They pressed through the ice, through my boots, through my hands, into my chest. One of the team shone a flashlight under the ice. A faint glow reflected off shapes moving beneath. Shadows elongated, twisting, forming patterns that weren't natural. They swirled in unison, circling, pressing, waiting. And then I heard it. Clearer this time. A melody of despair, quiet but insistent.
Help! Help!
"Help," repeated layered, 1,000 voices in one. I turned away, stomach churning, pressing my hands to my face. The cold didn't matter anymore. The world had narrowed to shadows under ice, whispers in unison, patient, deliberate, waiting. The lead officer shook his head. "Nothing alive down there. Ice is thick. Must be reflections. Air pockets. Hallucinations from the cold." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to, but I couldn't. My eyes refused to leave the shapes. They moved too deliberately. Paused when I paused. Shifted when I shifted. Waiting, observing. I thought about the calls. The screaming woman. The frozen lake. The tapes in the archives. 2 decades of fear pressed into memory, into ice, into every record. Now here it was again. Real. Pressing into the present. Patient. Deliberate. Waiting. I knelt at the edge, careful, fingers brushing the surface. Ice cold, unyielding. And then, faintly, I heard breathing. Beneath the ice. Shallow, deliberate, echoing. Not human, but echoing human panic. The shadows moved faster, circling under me, whispering in unison. "Please, don't leave. Help us." The team was calling out to me, urging me to step back, but I couldn't. I couldn't look away. The ice had become a veil between worlds, between the living and the desperate, patient, deliberate presence lurking beneath. A crack ran through the ice, faint but spreading. Not directly beneath me, but close enough to make my knees tremble. The shadows froze for a heartbeat, then flowed again, swirling, pressing, whispering.
Help! Help!
Help! Over and over, frame by frame, wave by wave, I stepped back, stumbling. Cold air bit at my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was pressed into the whispers, the desperate voices, patient, deliberate, waiting. I thought about the children, the adults, the screams trapped in tapes, dash cams, abandoned calls, now manifesting beneath the ice. 20 years pressed into this frozen lake, patient and deliberate, waiting. One rescuer leaned over, voice tight. "We're not getting anyone out. The ice is too thick. There's nothing alive down there. Just shadows, reflections." I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him I could hear them, could see them. Felt them pressing, patient, deliberate, waiting. But my voice caught. And I realized something worse. Even if there was no one physically trapped, the presence beneath the ice had been waiting. For me. For us. For anyone who would witness. To feed on memory, panic, desperation, patient, deliberate, waiting. The shadow shifted again. Slow now, deliberate, pressing outward. The whispers changed, layering into a rhythm. Stay, stay, stay. Not pleading anymore. Instructing, commanding, insistent, watching, patient, waiting. I swallowed, trying to keep my composure. Heart hammering, breath shallow. The ice beneath me hummed faintly, a vibration that pressed into my chest, pressing, insistent. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape, but I felt something tethering me to the edge of the lake, to the shadows, to the whispers beneath the ice. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I thought about last night. The call, the screams, the impossibility of drowning in frozen water. And now here I realized the truth. It didn't matter if it was ice, water, air, or time. This presence existed beyond reason, beyond barriers. 20 years, patient, deliberate, waiting. A gust of wind rippled over the surface. Snow swirled. And the shadows below moved faster, more synchronized, whispering in unison.
Help! Help!
Don't leave. And I understood fully that the lake itself had memory. That the ice pressed down not only on water, but on memory, on fear, on panic accumulated over decades. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I stepped back, finally pulling my gaze from the ice. My knees shook. Hands trembled. My mind raced, trying to disentangle reality from the impossible. But the whispers followed me in thought. Pressing, patient, deliberate, waiting. I could hear them in my head now, separate from the wind, from the ice, from the team calling instructions. Layered voices, screaming, pleading, patient, deliberate, waiting. A chorus of memory pressed into my consciousness. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to block them, but they would not be blocked. One rescuer snapped a photo. Flash illuminated the ice briefly. For a fraction of a second, I saw them. Faces pressed against the underside, pale, distorted, mouths open in silent scream. Shadows, yes, but real shapes, pressed into frozen memory. Patient, deliberate, waiting. The team packed up eventually, citing cold, risk, impossibility. I stayed at the edge a moment longer, staring into the lake. Shadows swirled beneath. Whispers persisted, layering into my mind. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I left finally, walking back through the snow, footsteps crunching, heart racing. But the whispers followed. Not through the air, not in sound, but pressed into memory, pressing into my chest, into my thoughts. I realized then that it didn't matter if I left the lake behind. Patient, deliberate, waiting, 20 years of frozen voices. And now, me. Even now, when I close my eyes, I see the ice, the shadows beneath, the faces pressed against its underside, mouths open in silent screams. I can hear the whispers, layered, overlapping, patient, deliberate, waiting. And I know if I return, it will be there. Waiting, patient, deliberate, never leaving, never ending. I thought the lake was behind me. Thought I'd left the ice, the shadows, the whispers, and the patient, deliberate waiting far away. But night has a way of following, creeping into the quiet spaces we believe are safe. It started with the sink. I was washing my hands in the tiny kitchen of my apartment. Late after logging the morning's reports, coffee still steaming in a chipped mug, papers stacked, the heater humming in a futile attempt to warm the apartment. The building was silent, ordinary, safe. Or so I told myself. I turned on the tap, cold water first, then warm. And then I heard it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the pipes, a creak, a hiss, some plumbing noise. But then I realized the scream wasn't coming from the pipes. It was coming with the water, flowing through it. Pressed through the sound of running liquid, sharp and frantic, ragged, pleading. I froze, hands hovering over the faucet. The sound pressed into me, insistent, deliberate. Screams I knew. Screams I had logged, called, tried to file away and forget. The same desperate, ragged voices from the frozen lake. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I turned the water off, fumbling, my fingers trembling. Silence. For a heartbeat. Then, a drip. A single drop. And the scream returned, faint at first, rising through the hollow of the sink, reverberating against the porcelain.
Help! Help!
Don't leave, please. My chest tightened. My stomach turned. I gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white. I wanted to tell myself it was my imagination, some leftover panic pressed into memory, seeping into ordinary sound. But it wasn't imagination. It was deliberate, pressed, waiting. I stepped back, shook my head, pressed my palms to my face. My apartment was quiet. Ordinary, my neighbors asleep. No one was calling, no one was screaming. And yet I could hear them, clear, layered. Multiple voices, overlapping, pressing through the sound of running water. I tried to remember my training. Focus, breathing, rational thought. Maybe the pipes were old, twisted. Maybe some vibration was making the sound of voices seem familiar. Maybe it was nothing, but the voices weren't nothing. They carried memory, desperation, fear, patient, deliberate, waiting. I sank onto the edge of the counter, trying to ground myself. Tried to imagine anywhere else. The coffee mug, the papers, the hum of the heater. Tried to rationalize, you're tired. You've been through Ice Lake, calls, tapes. You're imagining it. But when I turned the tap back on, cold water. Careful, steady. The screaming returned instantly. Help! Please, help! Pressed through the sound of liquid, through the hollow drain, curling into the air like smoke. And then faintly, beneath it, another sound. Laughter. Soft. Patient. Deliberate. Waiting. I pressed my hands to my ears, rocking slightly. My heart thundering. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. Trapped. The walls pressing closer. The kitchen table, the stack of papers, the humming heater, all meaningless. All drowned beneath the presence. Patient. Deliberate. Waiting. I called the dispatcher. Not to log a call, not to file a report, not for help. Just to speak. To anchor myself. Hello, it's me. I hear. It's coming. Through the water. My voice shook, faltered, caught in my throat. Silence on the other end. No words. Just waiting. I thought about the lake, about the frozen surface, about shadows moving beneath, about the whispers in unison, pressing through ice, pressing into my chest. And now they were here, flowing through the ordinary, the familiar, the faucet in my own apartment. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I tried a bucket of water, poured it slowly into the sink. The screams followed, clear, multiple layers, desperate, pressed into my mind.
Help! Help!
Don't leave, please. I stumbled back, shaking. My vision blurred. Fogged by breath, fear, disbelief. The apartment, tiny, safe, known, became unrecognizable. Hollow, pressed. The faucet hissed. Water dripped, and the voices pressed against the very walls now. Curling around my skull, pressing, insistent. I wanted to leave, to run, but I couldn't. Not entirely. Part of me knew that if I abandoned this place, if I ran, I would carry it with me. The presence was patient, deliberate, waiting. It followed attention. It fed on recognition. And now it had mine. I grabbed my phone, called my supervisor, tried to speak calmly, tried to rationalize. There's something wrong. With the pipes, maybe. I think I hear screaming in the sink. Silence on the line, then static. And beneath the static, faint, deliberate, unmistakable, help. Don't leave! Please! I dropped the phone. It skidded across the counter. My breathing was ragged, shallow. The faucet hissed. The water dripped. The voices continued, pressing, layering, patient, deliberate, waiting. I thought about all the calls I had taken over the years. The screaming woman, the abandoned sedan, the frozen lake, the tapes in the archives. 20 years of fear pressed into memory, pressing into time, pressing into me. And now here, flowing through water in my own apartment. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I pressed my hands to my face again, tried to block it, tried to imagine silence. But the whispers followed my thoughts, pressing, insistent. Help! Help! Don't leave! Please! I went to the sink again, turned the water on, trying to face it, to control it. The screams returned immediately, clear, layered, desperate. And beneath them, the laughter. Faint, patient, waiting. A presence in the plumbing, in the walls, in memory itself. I realized then that it didn't matter what I did. Running, turning off the faucet, leaving the apartment. The presence didn't need a body. It didn't need ice. It didn't need water. It only needed attention. And I had given it mine. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I thought of the rescuers at the lake, of the shadows under ice, swirling, whispering, of the calls in the dispatch archive, all threads connecting through time, memory, water, air. I was woven into it now. A new node, a new witness, patient, deliberate, waiting. I tried to sleep that night, tried to drown it out with the hum of the heater, the fan, the soft sounds of the city outside. But when I ran the tap, brushed my teeth, poured a glass of water, the screaming returned. Layered, overlapping, pressing, desperate, patient, deliberate, waiting. I began avoiding the water. Even a glass, a tap, a faucet. It was impossible. Even condensation on the windows whispered, pressed into my mind. The presence had grown. It threaded itself into my routines, into memory, into the hum of the apartment, into the water. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I understood something terrible. The lake, the frozen surface, the abandoned calls, the voices in the archives. These weren't isolated events. They were ongoing, flowing, threaded through memory, through space, through time, patient, deliberate, waiting. And now, through my own apartment, they had found me. I sat at the edge of the counter, knees drawn to my chest, shaking. My apartment, familiar and safe moments ago, felt alien, hollow, pressed. The faucet dripped. I could hear it clearly. And beneath the drip, voices, layered, multiple, desperate, insistent. Help! Help! Don't leave! Please! I thought about leaving. Thought about moving, escaping, starting fresh somewhere else. But the thought of turning on a faucet there or hearing water in some hotel sink made me shiver. The presence didn't need geography. It only needed attention, and I had given it mine. Patient, deliberate, waiting. Even now I hear it sometimes. The faint hiss of water, the drip, the gurgle. And beneath it, layered voices, desperate, screaming, patient. Deliberate, waiting. I can never ignore running water again. Never. Because the moment it flows, they are there. Beneath it, in it, waiting, patient, deliberate, always waiting. I wasn't supposed to hear it again. I had told myself that. After the lake, the shadows, the whispers in the sink, I had tried to go back to normal. Tried to sleep. Tried to ignore every sound that could be a trick of pipes or imagination. But some things don't forgive. Some things don't let you go. The last call came late, after the shift. My hands were tired from typing logs, my neck stiff from leaning into the headset for hours when the line rang again. I didn't recognize the number. No ID, no trace. Just ringing. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the green button. Part of me wanted to let it go. Part of me knew I couldn't. Not after everything, I answered. 901, what's your emergency? My voice was quieter than usual, cautious, tired, silence, just static. And then a whisper, soft, tentative, faint, like someone leaning close to my ear, breathing through the line. Don't leave me, I froze. My heart skipped a beat. My fingers trembled. The words weren't new. I'd heard them before, pressed into memory, hovering on the edge of dread. Patient, deliberate, waiting. Hello? I asked, voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. Who is this? Where are you? Static. Then the whisper again, clearer this time. Don't leave me. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the blank monitors. My breath fogged faintly in the cold dispatch room. The whisper was real, not in my head, not imagined. Pressed into the line, intimate, desperate, insistent. I tried to stay rational. The line could be hacked, a prank, interference. I tried to convince myself. But the tone, the deliberate cadence, the urgency pressed beneath the words, it wasn't ordinary. It carried memory, panic, a pressing demand, patient, deliberate, waiting. I reached for the call log, fingers shaking. The number was blocked. No coordinates, nothing to trace. Just the whisper curling around the headset, pressing into my skull, folding the room into itself. I spoke again. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere. Can you tell me your name? Silence. Then, faintly, under the static, the whisper, please. Don't leave! I pressed record. Needed proof, evidence, something tangible. The whisper continued, layered now, multiple voices overlapping, desperate. Help! Help! Don't leave! I closed my eyes, tried to imagine something else. My bed, my apartment, the city outside, anything. But the line held me, anchored me to the sound. Patient, deliberate, waiting. It wasn't like the lake. There were no shadows beneath the ice, no visual horrors. But the sound itself pressed into me, into memory, into fear, into every corner of my mind that I had thought safe. I tried to speak again. I won't leave. I'll stay. I'm listening. Static filled the line. Then for a moment the whisper became a sob. Gentle, faint, but deliberate, vulnerable. Don't leave. I pressed my palms to my face, tried to block it, tried to tell myself it was just sound, interference, memory pressing itself into my perception. But it wasn't. Not entirely. It was deliberate. It was alive. Pressed into my thoughts, curling around my pulse, patient, deliberate, waiting. I could feel my own heartbeat echoing in my ears, slow, heavy, trying to anchor me. But the whisper pressed against it. Don't leave me, repeated, layered, pressing, insistent. I remembered all the calls. The lake, the abandoned sedan, the voices in the sink, tapes in the archives, a thread running through decades, patient, deliberate, waiting. And now it had found this line. Me, my ears, my mind, my attention. I leaned back, rocking slightly. Tried to breathe. Tried to rationalize. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving you, Static hissed. Then the whisper, faint, fragile, but unmistakable. I'm still here. It wasn't a plea anymore. Not exactly. Not begging. Stating fact. Present, patient, deliberate, waiting. I pressed the headset to the desk, my fingers white around the edges. Tried to shake off the creeping panic, tried to ground myself. But the voice followed me in thought. In memory, in every sensation. The room grew smaller. Air heavier. Silence pressed into sound. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I thought about the lake. The ice, shadows beneath. The desperate cries, layered and overlapping, pressing through reality into memory. The presence hadn't been confined to the ice. Not then, not now. It moved, it waited. It pressed, patient, deliberate, waiting. I remembered the dispatch archives, voices recorded decades ago, screaming, begging, pressed into magnetic tape, stored, forgotten, patient, deliberate, waiting. And now here, through a line I had no way to trace, through a number that didn't exist. It had reached me. I wanted to hang up, run, leave, destroy the equipment. But part of me, a voice inside my mind, knew that would do nothing. It didn't need the line to reach me. I had given it attention, and it had claimed me. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I whispered back, almost afraid to, almost hoping to break the spell. I hear you. I won't leave. I'm listening. Static hissed, stretching, pressing. Then the whisper, don't leave. I'm still here. I felt a cold weight pressing into my chest. Not literal, but psychological, suffocating. Every nerve alive, my skin crawling, my mind stretched thin. The whisper repeated in layers, pressing against rationality, curling around memory. Don't leave. Help, please. I tried to record everything. Needed proof. Needed evidence. Needed to anchor reality in something tangible. Fingers shaking, I pressed record. The whispers continued, layered, overlapping. Not exactly voices. Not entirely human, not entirely sane. Pressed into memory, pressed into thought. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I sank into my chair, staring at the blank monitors. The whispers continued, even through headphones, even through the digital pulse of the recording, even in the silence after the line went dead. Patient, deliberate, waiting. I realized then, fully, that the presence didn't need the call to be alive. It only needed recognition, attention, witnesses, and I had given it mine. Even now, after the line went dead, after the room returned to ordinary silence, I hear it, pressed into the hum of fluorescent lights, into the faint vibration of the heater, into the drips of condensation on the window, whispered insistence, layering over memory, pressing through thought. I'm still here. Don't leave. Patient, deliberate, waiting. And I know it will not leave. Not until it has been heard. Not until it has pressed itself fully into me. Patient, deliberate, waiting. always waiting. I don't pick up unknown calls anymore. I don't check the line after hours, but sometimes when the apartment is quiet, I hear a whisper through static in the TV, the hum of my fridge, the running water in my bathroom. It presses into my mind, curling around my pulse. And I remember that final call, the whisper, "Don't leave me, I'm still here." I have no proof, no tape, no number, nothing tangible. Only the memory of the voice. Patient, deliberate, waiting. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear it. Layered, pressed, desperate, yet patient, deliberate, waiting, and I know it will find me again, because it always does. I still remember the night that call came in. It was cold, quiet, the kind of night when every sound seems to stretch a little too long. I was halfway through my shift at dispatch when the line lit up. Line 3. The woman's voice on the other end was shaky but polite. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "There's something inside our walls. I've heard everything. Break-ins, domestic fights, kids prank calling, but that one made me pause." "Inside your walls?" I repeated. She let out this nervous little laugh, like she already knew how crazy it sounded. "Yes. We've been hearing knocking, scratching, moving. My husband thinks it's rats, but it's not. It's heavier." There was a voice in the background then. A man's voice, frustrated, muffled. "Just tell them to send someone." I asked for their address, typed it into the log. It was a quiet street on the north side, small neighborhood, old homes built in the 60s. Nothing unusual. "Okay, ma'am," I said. "We'll have an officer swing by. Stay calm. Stay on the line if you need to." She hesitated before answering. "It's moving again." I heard it faintly through the receiver. A dull thump, 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 slow, hollow, like knuckles brushing wood from somewhere deep inside the house. Then silence. When the officers got there 20 minutes later, they radioed in almost right away. "Possible rodents," one said, trying not to laugh. "Family's just scared." "We'll check the basement." I remember staring at the waveform on my screen. The woman's voice still echoing in my mind. Something about that thump had weight to it. Not like a mouse. Not like plumbing. It sounded intentional. The officers stayed for about half an hour. When they left, they reported nothing out of the ordinary. No footprints. No signs of a break-in. Just an anxious family and some noise in the drywall. They signed off, joked about pest control, and went back on patrol. That should have been the end of it. But the next night, she called again. Same voice. Same slow panic creeping underneath her words. "It's louder now," she said. "It's following us from room to room." I could hear her breathing hard, moving while she talked. "Please, it's not animals." We called exterminators. They didn't find anything. Then I heard it again, through the line, clearer this time. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks. A pause. Then a fourth, lighter one. It was so close to the phone that it made the microphone crackle. I felt the hairs rise on my arms. "Ma'am, are you sure no one else is in the house?" I asked. "My kids are asleep," she said. "My husband's checking the attic." "Oh God, wait!" Her voice cut off. I heard something fall, like furniture scraping against the floor. Then a muffled shout, her husband maybe. The line crackled, static rushing through. Then, quiet. I sat there frozen, headset pressed against my ear, listening. After a few seconds, she came back, whispering, "It's in the walls behind the kitchen now. He says he saw something move." I typed faster, dispatching another unit. My throat was dry. My hands were shaking. By the time the officers got there, the sounds had stopped again. They searched the place top to bottom. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints in the attic dust. No broken vents. No animal droppings. Nothing. Just scratch marks inside the drywall. I remember one of the officers describing it to me later. Thin, vertical lines. Not like claws, more like fingers. They said the family looked embarrassed when they left. Promised to call an exterminator again. Everyone laughed about it at the station. But I didn't. Something about the woman's voice stayed with me. How she went from scared to almost numb by the end. 3 nights later, the husband called. His tone was sharp, angry. "You people need to take this seriously," he said. "It's not in the walls anymore. It's in the vents." He put the phone near one of the air grates. For a second, there was nothing. Then, faintly, I heard it again. That same deliberate rhythm. "Knock, knock, knock," he whispered. "It's mimicking us." Before I could respond, the sound came again, faster this time, almost impatient. "Knock, knock, knock, knock." He cursed under his breath, pulled the phone back. "It knows when we talk," he said. "It stops when we look for it. It only moves when we're quiet." I didn't know what to say. I followed protocol, told him to stay calm, to keep everyone in one room until officers arrived. But he interrupted me. "No," he said. "You don't understand. It talks back now." And before I could ask what he meant, I heard it. A voice. So faint it barely formed words, like air moving through pipes, but shaped into something human. "Let me out." I pulled the headset away. My heart was pounding. I could hear the officer units already on the radio heading that way. By the time they arrived, the family was waiting outside on the lawn. The husband refused to go back in. The wife was shaking, clutching her 2 kids close. The youngest kept saying, "It's knocking again," over and over. The police checked the vents, the walls, even cut a few open. Nothing, just insulation. Empty space. That was 3 months ago. I thought about them a lot afterward. Sometimes I'd check the address in our system, see if there were any follow-up calls. There weren't. The case was marked as resolved, but about a week after the last report, I started hearing things too. Little things at first. Soft clicks in the background of my headset when no one was on the line. A slow, hollow rhythm echoing faintly behind certain calls. I told myself it was interference, a bad wire. But the pattern was the same. 3 knocks, a pause. Then one more. One night, after my shift, I was washing dishes at home. The water running, the apartment quiet, and I heard it from somewhere behind the wall near the sink. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, soap dripping from my hands. Breath caught in my throat. I turned off the faucet. Silence. Then again, fainter this time, but real. Knock, knock, knock. I pressed my palm against the tile. The wall was cool still, but the sound moved, slid along the wall toward the corner of the kitchen, like something dragging its knuckles just behind the plaster. I stayed there for a long time, listening. My heart pounding so hard I could barely hear over it. Finally, I whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. A whisper, "Help me." I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a chair. The wall went silent again. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the end of the week, I'd convinced myself it was stress, that I'd absorbed too much of other people's fear. But sometimes, especially when the house is quiet, or when I'm lying in bed and the pipes start to settle, I still hear it. That soft rhythm. 3 slow knocks, then one more. And lately, it's closer, not behind the kitchen wall anymore, not in the pipes. Sometimes, when I'm sitting at my desk typing reports, I hear it under the floor, right beneath my feet. Knock, knock, knock. A pause, then one. Final tap, like a fingertip against wood. And in the smallest moments, when I let myself listen too long, I swear I hear it trying to speak again. A faint voice, pushing through drywall and dust, whispering up through the cracks. Let me out. It's strange how a sound can haunt you, how it can settle in your head like dust and never leave. After that first call, the one with the family and the knocking in their walls, I thought it was over. I wanted it to be over. But 2 months later, I got another call. Same address. When I saw the number flash on my screen, my stomach twisted. It shouldn't have been possible. The line was listed as inactive. The family had moved out weeks ago. Still, the call came through, a soft click, then static, and under it, breathing. "Hello?" I said. "This is 911. Do you have an emergency?" No answer. Just that low, slow breath. It was wet, uneven, like someone whispering through dirt. Then, very faintly, "Help me!" I froze. I knew that voice. It was the woman from before. the same tone, the same crack in her words. But she was gone. They'd found her car abandoned near the edge of town after the move. The family had disappeared. Everyone assumed they left without telling anyone. The line cut out. I remember sitting there, headset still pressed against my ear, feeling my pulse in my throat. I logged it. Unconfirmed distress call, line terminated. But I didn't tell anyone that it came from a disconnected number. The next morning, a unit was sent out for a welfare check anyway, just to be sure. I didn't ask them to. Someone upstairs must have noticed the address and remembered the case. They radioed back an hour later. Their voices were quiet. Heavy. Dispatch. We need forensics. There's something here. I can still hear that officer's voice trembling in my headset. We found a body. The report came in later that afternoon. The house was still empty. Dust everywhere, power cut off. But in the crawl space beneath the kitchen, wedged between insulation and pipes, they found a woman's remains. Long dead, months, maybe years. At first, they thought it might be a squatter. But then, they found a bracelet. One with the same initials as the woman who called us. That didn't make sense. Her call had come through that morning. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again, that breath, that word, help me. They said the body was curled up, knees to chest, like she'd been hiding or trying to crawl deeper, away from something. The weirdest part, though, her phone was still there, battery drained, covered in dust, wedged just inches from her hand. When they charged it, they found one final voicemail. It wasn't long, a faint sound, like knocking, then a whisper. Don't let it out. That's all. The story should have ended there, but it didn't. 3 days after they pulled the body out, the calls started again. Same number, same pattern, always at night, always silence first, then breathing. Sometimes I'd hang up before it spoke. Sometimes I couldn't move fast enough. Help me. Or sometimes, it's cold. I started keeping a notebook beside the console, writing down every time it happened. AM 327, AM 159, AM always between midnight and 4. The tech guys ran diagnostics. They said the line wasn't active. The phone was logged as evidence, sealed away in the police storage unit across town. That was impossible. I thought maybe someone was pranking me. Maybe another dispatcher, someone who knew the story. But the voice, it wasn't recorded. It changed. It breathed differently each time. And one night, it said my name. I remember it so clearly. It was raining hard. The storm had knocked out half the phones in the county. I was working alone, covering the graveyard shift. Around 2:30, the line lit up. Unknown number. I didn't even need to look to know who it was. I hesitated before answering. Then, slowly, I said, "This is 911. What's your emergency?" Static hissed through my headset. Then the faintest whisper, "Why didn't you help me?" My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice cracking. The line crackled again. I thought it dropped until I heard something, faint like metal scraping. Then a low rhythmic knock. 3 knocks, a pause, then one more. My chest went cold. I pulled off the headset, stared at the screen. The number flickered for a moment, then changed. It wasn't the same house anymore. It was my address. I didn't tell anyone about that part. What could I even say? That a dead woman was calling me from evidence lockup? That she somehow knew where I lived? I tried to ignore it, but the knocking followed me. At first, it was in my apartment walls, then under the floor. Then, one night, it came from the ceiling, like fingers dragging across the plaster above my bed. I moved my mattress to the living room after that. But no matter where I went, I could still hear it. Knock, knock, knock. A pause. Then one. Lighter tap, like a breath through drywall. A week later, I went to evidence myself. I don't even know why. Maybe to prove something to my own mind. Maybe to stop feeling insane. The storage unit was cold. It smelled like dust and chemicals. The tech on duty let me in after I said I needed to check a recording for the Carter file. That was her name, Lydia Carter. Her phone was sealed in a clear bag. Cracked screen, dried mud, a few strands of hair tangled near the case. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. When I turned it over, the screen flickered for a split second. Battery dead. Completely impossible. But I swear, it lit up, and for just a moment, I saw a reflection. Not mine. Someone crouched behind me. I spun around. Empty room. When I looked back at the phone, the screen was black again. I put it back, sealed the case, and walked out. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely sign the log. That night, the calls stopped. For 2 days. Then came back louder. It's been 3 weeks now. I've stopped answering the calls, but I still hear them, ringing faintly through my headset even when the console's off. Sometimes the others hear it too. One of the newer dispatchers said she got a call from the same number last night. She said there was just whispering, but she didn't recognize the voice. I did. She played it back for me this morning. The static, the breath. Then the same 3 words I've heard since the beginning. Help me. Please. But this time, there was something else in the background. A faint creaking sound. Wood splitting. And then a whisper. Too low to make out right before the call ended. She turned to me and asked, "What do you think it was?" And I didn't know what to say, because I recognized that sound. It was the same slow, hollow knock that used to come through the walls. But now it wasn't distant. It wasn't in her house, or mine. It was on the line, like someone was knocking from inside the call. Last night, I got home around 4 a.m., exhausted. I sat in my car outside the apartment, just staring at the steering wheel, too tired to move. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but part of me couldn't help it. I put it on speaker and said nothing. Static filled the car. Then, a whisper. Under the floor. My whole body went cold. I looked at my phone again. No signal. The call shouldn't even have gone through. The voice came again. Under the floor. Then, knock, knock, knock. This time, it wasn't from the phone. It came from under the passenger seat. I dropped the phone and ran. When I came back an hour later, after sitting in my car outside a gas station, shaking, the call log was empty. No record, nothing. But there were scratches under the carpet. Thin, vertical ones, like fingernails. I think about her sometimes, Lydia Carter. About how she must have felt, crawling into that dark space. Hearing something move closer through the walls, trying to hide where no one would ever look, trying to make a call that no one could trace, and now, somehow she's still calling. Maybe she's still there, under the house. Maybe something else is. Maybe whatever she was running from never left. I don't answer anymore. But I keep the phone on silent now because when it rings, I can feel it vibrate across the table, almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat, like a knock, 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 knock. A pause, then one final tap. And sometimes, I swear I hear the faintest whisper leaking from the speaker, even without touching it. Don't let it out. There's something wrong with the walls in this place. I used to laugh about it. The hum of old wires, the cracks in the drywall, the way the vents moaned when the air kicked on. But lately, it's like the building's breathing. You can feel it if you sit still long enough. A slow rhythm in the concrete. Soft, steady, almost alive. I've worked dispatch for 8 years now. Long enough to know what exhaustion sounds like. Long enough to mistake the hum of machines for voices when it's 3 in the morning and you've been listening to screams all night. But what I heard last week, it wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't the building. It was me. It started on a Tuesday. Rainy, quiet, the kind of shift where you're just waiting for something bad to happen. I was alone in the booth that night. Everyone else had gone to lunch or stepped out for air. The phones were silent. The only sound was the gentle static coming from the consoles. Then line 3 blinked red. I answered automatically. 911, what's your emergency? For a moment, nothing. Just a faint hiss like someone breathing too close to the mic. Then a voice, soft, shaky, whispered, "Help me." I sat up straight. It sounded familiar. Too familiar. "Ma'am, can you tell me your location?" The voice trembled. "It's dark. I can't move." There was something wrong with the tone, the pitch, the way the words broke at the end of each sentence. I frowned and asked, Who am I speaking to? Static. Then again, the same voice, louder this time. Please, help me. And that's when I realized it was my voice, not similar. Not close, mine. The same tone, the same crack in my throat. Every word exactly the way I spoke them. I froze. Headset pressed against my ear, trying to breathe quietly enough to listen. I spoke again. He's here. My stomach dropped. Who's there? I asked, my own voice shaking. Then over the line, my voice answered back. He's in the walls. I ripped the headset off so fast it hit the console. For a few seconds, I just sat there, heart slamming in my chest, staring at the blinking light on the board. Line 3 was still open. I put the headset back on, hands trembling. Who is this? The line crackled. And then I heard something move, not on the line. In the wall behind me, a low scrape, like fingernails dragging through plaster. I turned. The sound stopped. When I faced forward again, the voice whispered, softer now, almost right next to my ear. Please, get me out. Then the call ended. I told myself I imagined it, that maybe I was hearing playback or feedback from another operator. I even called the tech guys to check the lines. They ran a full diagnostic, but everything came back normal. No open channels. No crossfeed, one of them said. Then he added, almost joking, maybe the system just missed you. I didn't laugh. That night when I got home, I couldn't shake the sound. My own voice, whispering from the dark, begging. 3 days passed before it happened again. It was almost midnight. The others were out on a cigarette break. The building was quiet except for the steady hum of rain against the windows. Then line 2 blinked. Same number as before. No caller ID. I hesitated this time. I shouldn't have answered. But I did. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause. Then softly, why didn't you help me? I didn't breathe. Didn't speak. The voice was me again. Only this time it sounded weaker. Like I was speaking through water, I whispered, where are you? The reply came slow, dragged out between crackles. Behind you! I spun around. The booth was empty. But the wall behind my chair, the one that separates dispatch from the maintenance corridor, was vibrating. Not loudly. Just enough to make the pens on my desk tremble. Then came the knocking. Slow. Hollow. Knock. Knock! Knock! It stopped! Then, faintly, my own voice whispered through the line again. He's in here with me. The call disconnected. I didn't tell anyone this time. What was I supposed to say? That I heard my own voice calling for help from inside the walls? They'd think I'd lost it. Maybe I had. But the next day, one of the janitors, Carl, mentioned something that made my blood run cold. He said he was sweeping the maintenance corridor when he heard someone talking behind the drywall. Said it sounded like a woman crying softly. He thought maybe a radio was left on. But when he checked, the wiring was dead. No sound system, no vents, no access points, just concrete and old insulation. That night, I stayed late again. I told myself I wanted to catch the call in real time, to prove it wasn't real, but deep down, I think I wanted to hear it again. Around 2:40 a.m., the lights flickered. The lines all went dead for a moment, then came back online. Except one. Line 4 blinked red. I didn't even answer this time. I just listened. Static filled the headset. Then slowly I heard breathing. My breathing. Why won't you come? It whispered. I tried to trace the sound, but it wasn't coming from the headset anymore. It was coming from inside the console. I pressed my hand against the metal panel. It was vibrating softly like a voice trapped behind it. Then I heard it again, clearer now. Please! Let me out. I pushed my chair back and stood. My pulse was pounding in my ears. The walls felt closer somehow, like the whole room was shrinking. And then right behind me, a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. She's coming. The lights went out. I don't remember leaving the room. All I remember is standing outside in the hallway, staring at the door like it might open on its own. When the maintenance team checked the next morning, they said one of the panels inside the wall had been ripped loose. From the inside, they found hair caught on the insulation. Long, dark strands. My hair. I know what that sounds like. But it's true. They compared it. It matched, only I hadn't been in that wall. At least not yet. The calls didn't stop after that. They got worse. Every night, the same pattern. A call from nowhere, my voice whispering for help, sometimes crying, sometimes humming. Once it said something I'll never forget. It's empty here, just wires and teeth, I tried to tell my supervisor. But when I played the recordings back, the line was silent, every single time. He looked at me like I was tired, maybe overworked. He told me to take a few days off. I didn't argue, but even at home, I could still hear it. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd catch faint static from my baby monitor. Then my own voice whispering through it, muted, echoing, saying things I couldn't make out. Sometimes it would laugh. Other times it would just breathe. 2 nights ago, I went back to the call center. I couldn't stay away anymore. The building was dark, empty. But the lights over dispatch were still on, flickering. The air smelled like dust and ozone. I walked to my console, half expecting to see the phone already blinking, but it wasn't. Everything was still. Then, without warning, all 4 lines lit up at once. The sound that came through wasn't just static this time. It was movement, shuffling, whispering, and underneath it all, my voice layered over itself again and again, dozens of times, overlapping. Help me. Let me out. He's still here. He's still here. I ripped the headset off and threw it down, but the voices didn't stop. They were coming from the walls now, faint at first, then louder. I could hear nails scraping from inside the drywall. I could hear my own name. Then the wall behind the console cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but from the gap, something warm dripped onto the floor. Dark, thick, and behind it, the faint sound of a heartbeat. Slow, wet, human. Then, silence. The lights flickered one last time, and from the console speaker, barely audible, my voice whispered, "I'm still in here. That was last night. They're sending someone to check the system this morning. But I already know what they'll find. They'll find nothing wrong. They'll say the wiring's old, the recording's glitched. They'll say I'm hearing things, but I can still feel it. The walls are breathing again. And if I press my ear against the plaster, I can hear faint tapping from the other side. Knock. Knock, knock, then a pause. And my own voice. Softer now, whispering through the dark. Don't answer.